Chapter 221. Su Quan wasn't willing to reveal her whereabouts, so she hurriedly said, "If there's anything, look for me at the Myriad Grand Tavern in the east of the city." After which, she hurriedly led the Divine Dragon cult members away. Song Qingshu brought Li Yuanji to a nearby tree, and soon, a group of patrolling soldiers appeared before them. After checking the surroundings, the leading officer exclaimed in surprise, "I clearly heard a woman's laughter here. It can't be a ghost crying at night, right? This residence has been abandoned for a very long time, and it's said that a family of 13 was killed by bandits." A soldier shrunk his shoulders. The officer also felt a chill down his spine, and he spat, "What bad luck, let's go," after which, he led his subordinates away. That woman's laughter was so unrestrained that it attracted the soldiers here. With Su Quan's departure, the bewitching aura dissipated, and Li Yuanji regained her senses and pouted. In the dead of the night, a woman's voice is sharp, so it's natural for it to travel far. Lass, if you speak ill of other women behind their backs, you might end up with sores in your mouth. Song Qingshu teased, but in his heart, he was thinking, even though this Su Quan's martial arts are passable, it's nothing much. More importantly, where did she learn her bewitching technique? If she hadn't tried her best to influence my mind, her voice wouldn't have leaked out and attracted the patrolling soldiers. Brother Song, I think you must have been bewitched by that woman. Why are you speaking up for her so quickly? Li Yuanji's voice was filled with frustration. That's right, men love this kind of mature and beautiful women. If I don't fall for her, would I fall for a young lady like her? Song Qingshu retorted, and Li Yuanji's face immediately flushed red. I'm also very beautiful, all right? On the way back to the Four Quarters Embassy, Li Yuanji's face was dark, and she was sulking. Since you're so beautiful, why did you take the initiative to attack me? I don't like you. Song Qingshu intentionally teased, but he was still thinking of unraveling the knot in her heart. Who would have thought that Li Yuanji's words would hit the nail on the head? Her eyes reddened and she sat down under a tree by the river. She hugged her knees and buried her head in them, sobbing. Song Qingshu didn't expect that Li Yuanji, who was always spirited and bold, would have such a delicate side to her. He hurriedly comforted her. Actually, young girls are also very charming. You're slender and delicate, shy and pure, lovely and moving. These are all things that mature women can't compare to. Moreover, there's no man who doesn't like a beautiful young girl like you. Yu Yutong must be blind not to like you. Can't he see how much Zhang Zhaozhong likes you? Don't use that pervert to disgust people. Li Yuanji's tears turned into laughter. Since all men like him, then, do you like him? The young girl's eyes sparkled, and her voice carried a hint of nervousness. Of course I do. If Yu Yutong doesn't want you anymore, you can marry me, Song Qingshu said with a cheeky smile. Tui! Li Yuanji spat. She knew that Song Qingshu would casually reply with a mysterious gift. However, she still couldn't hide the butterflies in her stomach. However, she had grown up in the northern lands, so her free and easy personality allowed her to quickly recover. She snorted, "You're so insincere. You can't even compare to that old pervert Zhang Zhaozhong. I'd rather marry him than marry you." Hey, you don't have to be so cruel. Song Qingshu immediately became gloomy. Big brother Song, let me ask you a question. You have to answer me honestly. Li Yuanji suddenly stopped smiling and said solemnly, "What?" Song Qingshu was stunned. If big sister Luo Bing and I were both willing to marry you, who would you choose? Li Yuanji looked at him with anticipation. What an erotic topic. Song Qingshu didn't expect that she would ask such a question with such a serious expression. Happiness came too suddenly. Let me take a moment. I'm saying if, Li Yuanji said exasperatedly. She wanted Song Qingshu to see from a man's point of view who was more attractive between her and Luo Bing. Song Qingshu was also a little speechless. He thought, I've already played all over Luo Bing's body. How can I still make an objective evaluation? A trace of a smile appeared on his lips. If it were me, I'd definitely take both of you. No, you can only choose one. Li Yuanji was almost angered to death. Is that so? Song Qinshu stared at Li Yuanji and looked her up and down. Noticing that she was extremely nervous, he smiled. Then I'll choose you. Li Yuanji's eyes immediately curved. However, she deliberately suppressed the smile on her face, so that Song Qinshu wouldn't think that she was getting carried away and affecting her glorious image. She quickly asked seriously, "Why?" "There's no why. As the saying goes, there are 8 sufferings in life: birth, old age, illness, death, separation from love, resentment, unattainable, and being unable to let go. If you want something, you won't cherish it that much. A wife is inferior to a concubine is inferior to a mistress, and a mistress is inferior to a mistress. I've already done Luobing, so naturally, her charm isn't comparable to this lively young lady before me." In the blink of an eye, many thoughts flashed through Song Qingshu's mind. Of course, he didn't have the guts to tell Li Yuanji the true reason for fear of destroying a young lady's dream of love. Thus, he could only lie to her. No matter how gentle and charming Luobing is, she's still someone else's wife. If I were to choose, I'd definitely choose a pure young lady who treats me wholeheartedly. However, he added in his heart, of course, choosing a lover is another matter altogether. Li Yuanji was delighted. All men would wish for their wives to be young before they got married. Compared to big sister Luobing, this was her greatest advantage. After Yu Yutong calms down a little, it's not as if I don't have a chance. Alright, stop acting like a love-struck fool. Song Qinshu saw that her eyes were glazed over and guessed that she must be having some sweet dreams. I'll bring you back to the 4 Quarters Embassy first. I still have some matters to attend to later. Sure. Li Yuanji was overjoyed. Everything she saw was pleasing to the eye. She stretched her hand in front of Song Qinshu and said coquettishly, "My legs are numb. Pull me up." The pair of hands before her were as fair as jade, slender and clean. Her skin was fair and rosy, so tender that it seemed as if water could be squeezed out of it. Song Qinshu saw that her eyes were clear and pure. He couldn't help but grumble, "Don't you need to preserve your chastity for your Yu Yutong? It's just holding hands." "Big brother Song, your thoughts are so filthy." Li Yuanji glared at him. "Ever since I was young, I've touched countless men's hands, whether it's horse riding or martial arts training. What's the big deal about this? You're the one who's been touched by someone else, right?" Even though Song Qingshu's words were still unyielding, he still reached out to hold the soft hand in front of him. It felt as if there were no bones in his hand. Sighing in admiration, he exerted a little strength to pull her up. "Big brother Song, I think you can let go now." Li Yuanji saw that Song Qinshu had no intention of letting go after pulling her up. Instead, he held her hand and walked away. Even though Li Yuanji was thick-skinned, she couldn't take it. Song Qinshu didn't say anything else and quietly released her. He turned around and smiled at her. "Let's go." "Oh right, put on this guard uniform later. It won't be good if others see it." After he finished speaking, he stuffed a bag from his back into her hands. For some reason, even when they entered the 4 Quarters Embassy, Li Yuanji could still feel the warmth of his hand. For a moment, her soul seemed to have left her body. "Miss Li?" Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded by her ear. Li Yuanji raised her head in astonishment and saw Luobing, dressed in a guard uniform, sitting in the room, staring at her in a daze. Meanwhile, in the 4 Quarters Embassy, Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixian saw that Song Qinshu had brought another guard into his bedroom, and they couldn't help but whisper to one another. "The guard from yesterday didn't come out, and yet another one went in? Indeed, I didn't expect Lord Song's dignified and talented appearance to have such a taste. That guard has a petite figure and fair skin. I'm afraid that she's a lady. Sigh, there are many men in this world with fair skin. I heard that the people in the Xiang residence would rub a kind of medicinal powder on their young boys, and by the time they grow up, Their skin would be even fairer than a lady's. Why do you know so much about it? Could it be that? Don't think too much. I've only heard of it. Say, how good are women? They're slender and delicate. Why would Lord Song like men? SSS, do you think that Lord Song will suddenly? No. It can't be. Our skin is thick, so we shouldn't be able to catch Lord Song's eye. This won't do. In the future, I should head out to do more missions. It's too dangerous to stay in the Four Quarters Embassy. After Song Qingshu left, Luo Bing waited in the room uneasily. On one hand, she regretted allowing Song Qingshu to get close to her so easily. On the other hand, she was worried that Song Qingshu wouldn't be able to save her husband in the end. What should she do? What should I do? I was still thinking about how I should reject Song Qingshu's request when he came back. When the door was pushed open, she saw Li Yuanji by Song Qingshu's side, and she was both delighted and fearful. She was delighted that with Li Yuanji around, Song Qingshu wouldn't dare to act so brazenly. Wuji was fearful of her, but she was fearful that Li Yuanji might find out that her chastity had been stolen by Song Qingshu. In truth, women weren't afraid of having a secret affair, but of being discovered by a third party. Recalling the relationship between Li Yuanji and the Red Flower Society, Luo Bing's expression became complicated. Big Sister Luo, why are you here? Li Yuanji's heart was also filled with contradictions toward this love rival of hers. On one hand, Yu Yutong had fallen in love with Luo Bing, and on the other hand, she knew that Luo Bing had always been deeply in love with her husband. She had never pretended to speak to Yu Yutong, and she often envied Luo Bing's gentle and affectionate charm. Sigh, something happened to the Red Flower Society this time. Luo Bing sighed as she briefly recounted what had happened. Then, what about Yu Yutong? Li Yuanji asked with a trembling voice. He seems to have been captured as well. Luo Bing recalled the details of the incident. After hearing that the old branch master wanted him to use a honey trap, Yu Yutong had been in a daze. When the soldiers of the Wang residence charged in, he didn't even have a chance to resist before he was subdued. Brother Song, can you save him? Li Yuanji immediately turned to Song Qingshu. How many times has it been? It's their fault for being incapable, Song Qingshu said gloomily. Good brother, I beg you, I beg you. Li Yuanji began to act coquettishly again. Forget it, forget it. I'm scared of you. Saving one is saving two is also saving. I'll just save them all. Song Qingshu couldn't stand her deliberately coquettish tone, and quickly agreed. Seeing Li Yuanji beaming with joy, Luo Bing felt rather upset. She wondered why she had to pay the price of her body in order for him to save her husband, but Li Yuanji just had to act coquettishly a few times. By the way, you two can sleep here tonight. I have to go out for a while, Song Qingshu said to the two women. He then turned around to leave. Wait, Song. Luo Bing paused, then continued. In the afternoon, after you left, someone delivered a strange gift. Do you want to take a look? A strange gift? Song Qingshu was puzzled. Why do you think it's strange? Luo Bing calmed herself down and said softly, You are now a dignified imperial envoy. In order to curry favor with you, the officials in Xinjiang will either give you gold, silver, and jewelry or antiques, calligraphy, and paintings. In addition, they are afraid that you don't know who sent them, so they all left a name card. But this gift not only doesn't have a name card, but although the box is exquisite, the things inside are a bit too ordinary. When Luo Bing was strolling around the courtyard in the afternoon, she saw the guards checking the various gifts that had been delivered, in case there were any traps or things like that would harm the imperial envoy. Unintentionally overhearing the mysterious gift, the guards were about to throw the gift into the trash, but out of curiosity, they went over to take a look. Sure enough, they felt that it was strange. However, she had been in Jianghu for a long time, so her subconscious told her that there was something fishy about this gift. Thus, she had the guards place it in the bedroom. Chapter 222. Dates and Peaches? Looking at the 2 boxes of fruits, Song Qinshu fell into deep thought. Li Yuanji picked up a date and examined it closely, but she couldn't find anything amiss. She asked blankly, "Could it be that someone poisoned it?" Song Qinshu chuckled. "Don't worry, there's no poison in it." Tossing the peach back into the basket, Song Qinshu turned around and walked out. "You all should sleep first. I'll be heading out for a while. If nothing goes wrong, I won't be returning tonight." Hearing Song Qinshu's words, Luo Bing heaved a sigh of relief. Li Yuanji asked doubtfully, "Then where will you be sleeping?" A beautiful figure appeared in his mind, and Song Qinshu chuckled. "There's always a place to sleep." After leaving the 4 Quarters Embassy, Song Qinshu strolled calmly on the streets as he muttered to himself, "This person wants me to save her husband, that person wants me to save her husband, and there's even someone who wants me to save her lover. Sigh, could it be that I've really become the friend of women?" With the lesson of the divine dragon cult waiting for the rabbit, Song Qinshu was very careful this time. While walking, he used his true qi to investigate the surrounding aura. Along the way, he indeed felt several suspicious auras, but after turning left and right, he quickly got rid of the opposite party. "Big Brother isn't good at anything, but at the very least, I have one skill, and that is movement technique." Song Qinshu smiled gleefully as he swaggered off in a certain direction. In the Tian residence, Nan Lan suddenly woke up from her dream. She dreamed that she was intimate with Song Qinshu, and her husband, Tian Guanong, suddenly barged in. Then, that bastard, Song Qinshu, actually smiled at Tian Guanong before continuing to work on her body. Looking at her husband's murderous gaze, Nan Lan immediately woke up. "Why would I have such a dream?" Nan Lan touched her face with the back of her hand. Feeling the frightening heat, she couldn't help but bite her lower lip and mumble to herself in embarrassment. "Madam, did you dream of me?" An unfamiliar yet familiar voice suddenly sounded by her ear. Nan Lan raised her head in disbelief and saw Song Qinshu sitting by the window, looking at her with a smile. "Why is this dream so realistic?" Nan Lan was stunned. She subconsciously rubbed her eyes and saw Song Qinshu walking over from the window. She almost cried out in surprise, "It's really you?" Fortunately, she covered her mouth with her hand at the last moment, so her voice didn't alert Tian Qingwen, who was across the courtyard. "You missed me, so I appeared." Song Qinshu came to the bed in the blink of an eye. Nan Lan subconsciously tightened the quilt around her and shrank to the corner of the bed. "It's so late. Please behave yourself, Prince Song." "Self-respect?" Song Qinshu smiled and spread his hands. "We've been honest with each other. Is there a need to be so distant?" Nan Lan's expression turned cold. "Last night was only the reward I paid for saving Gui Nong. Now that the deposit has been paid, I hope that young master will not push your luck." "Do you really have to make it sound like a deal between us?" Song Qinshu smiled bitterly. "Alright, since you want to talk about complicated thoughts, deal? Then let's talk about a deal." "What deal?" A trace of confusion flashed through Nan Lan's eyes. "If I say that I've already found out Tian Guanong's whereabouts, will Madam welcome me a little?" Song Qinshu looked at the picturesque beauty on the bed. She was so delicate and timid that she was clutching the quilt tightly. As for her identity as someone else's wife, it helped to raise some evil thoughts in his heart. Gui Nong? Nan Lan suddenly felt that this name was a little unfamiliar. But as a wife, she subconsciously asked, "How is Gui Nong?" "Madam, won't you invite me to sit?" Song Qinshu didn't answer her. Instead, he looked at her aggressively. You sit." Nan Lan's heart trembled when she met his gaze. She had a feeling that something would happen today. "Thank you, madam." Song Qinshu revealed a happy expression and directly sat on the bed. "Sit on the stool." Nan Lan felt that since he was sitting so close to her, he definitely didn't have any good intentions. A woman's modesty gave her the courage to say this. "It's late at night and my limbs are a little frozen when I rushed here. The stool is too damp. Why don't Madam give me a corner of the quilt so that I can warm myself first and then talk to you about Brother Tian? Song Qingshu didn't wait for her reply. He directly lifted a corner of the quilt and hid his feet. Okay. Nan Lan felt that her mind was in a mess. When she came back to her senses, Song Qingshu had already shrunk under the quilt. You're so shameless. Nan Lan sighed. She could only curl up her legs and try her best not to touch his body. Song Qingshu also knew that there was a limit. He didn't continue to force her. He opened his mouth and said, "Today, I went to Zhang Zhao Zhong's house to drink, and then." Song Qingshu slowly recounted what happened during the day, but he didn't mention a word about Tian Guanong. Nan Lan finally became impatient. "You better talk about Guanong. Look at my poor memory." Song Qingshu slapped his forehead, but he quietly moved towards Nan Lan's side. "After that, I asked around and found out that Brother Tian was locked up in Prince Bao's residence." "Ah!" Nan Lan cried out in alarm. A trace of despair flashed in her eyes. Previously, when Tian Guanong returned home, he had boasted to her countless times that Prince Bao's residence had become an impenetrable fortress with the help of all the experts in the residence. Not even a fly would be able to escape. Song Qingshu had already unknowingly moved to her side. He said gently, "Madam, don't worry. I've already contacted helpers. They will be able to rescue Brother Tian soon." "Really?" Nan Lan turned her head excitedly. She realized that Song Qingshu's face was just 3 inches away from her. Her pink face couldn't help but blush. "Of course it's true." Song Qingshu reached out a finger and hooked it under her smooth chin. "Madam, I've done my best for you. Do I get a reward?" Nan Lan's eyelashes fluttered. Her voice trembled as she said, "I've already given you a reward last night. But I don't think it's enough. What should I do?" Song Qingshu's hand had already secretly slipped under her nightgown. He had come to bully Nan Lan again, not because of her beauty, but because of the rich pure yin energy in her body. He was currently in danger in Xingjing City. Moreover, he had just received a warning from an unknown person to flee early. How could he not seize the time to improve his power and prepare for the upcoming danger? "Didn't you say that you'll pay me the other half of the deposit after the job is done?" Nan Lan dodged backward and pleaded. "But you also said that I can visit your residence when I'm free." Song Qingshu's eyes were bright as he stared at her invasively. Nan Lan wanted nothing more than to dig a hole in the ground and bury herself in it. Before leaving the Four Quarters Embassy in the morning, she had, for some reason, teased him. She must have received her retribution now. She pitifully said, I was just joking. But I took it seriously." Song Qingshu gently squeezed the thing in his hand. "To be honest, I don't have a place to sleep now. I need Madam to shelter me for a night." Nan Lan's face was so red that water could drip from it. "How can that be? Has your room been taken over by a vixen?" "Madam is indeed wise. There is indeed a vixen in my room." Song Qingshu exerted a little more strength, and Nan Lan fell into his embrace. "Even if there is a vixen, the Four Quarters Embassy has so many rooms. Isn't there a place for you to sleep?" Nan Lan said softly with her head lowered. "One vixen is the greatest joy in the world, but 2 vixens is a little troublesome." In Song Qingshu's mind, the saying, "one monk carries water to drink, 2 monks have too much water to drink, 3 monks have no water to drink," appeared. "I don't believe that, given your personality, you would still be willing to come out if there really is a vixen." Nan Lan was completely confused. She bit her lips and said, "No matter how beautiful a vixen is, how can she compare to Madam's beauty?" With a light flick of his hand, Song Qingshu undid the bindings on her shoulders. Her clothes fell to the ground, revealing her shoulders that seemed to have been carved by a knife and her smooth skin. "Gui Nong's life is truly unfortunate to have a friend like you." Nan Lan sighed. A strong force came from the front of her, and she fell onto the bed. I saved you and your wife once before, so I will save him again this time. He should be grateful to me. Song Qingshu breathed a warm breath into her ear. Grateful to you for bullying his wife? Nan Lan's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. During this period of time, she had been running around everywhere and was really too tired. Whether it was physically or mentally, she needed a strong arm to rely on. She would just leave the matter of saving her husband to him. Are you stupid enough to let him know? Song Qingshu propped his hands on the bed and stared straight into her eyes. Naturally not. Nan Lan subconsciously replied. Then it's fine. Song Qingshu pressed down on her and whispered, Be good, don't close your legs. Don't worry. After a deliberately suppressed cry, Nan Lan looked at the man sitting cross-legged on the bed with a complicated expression. It's almost dawn, you should go. Isn't it still not dawn? With Chu Fian's previous reminder, Song Qingshu subconsciously paid attention to a woman's feelings. When cultivating, he no longer ignored his partner. He pulled Nan Lan into his arms and according to the route of the true qi in his body, Song Qingshu's fingertips moved across Nan Lan's skin at the same time. Nan Lan's body was covered in a layer of goosebumps. She pleaded. Tian Guanong's daughter is in the courtyard. She has always been smart. If she sees me, I don't want to live anymore. Don't worry, with my martial arts, she won't see me. Song Qingshu replied. But it's almost dawn. Nan Lan said anxiously. I didn't expect to be entangled with you for so long. Song Qingshu's words made Nan Lan ashamed and angry. Just as she was about to reach out and pinch him, Song Qingshu suddenly disappeared from the room. Looking at the empty bed, Nan Lan suddenly felt a little lost. She slowly sat up. For a moment, she didn't know what to think, sitting there in a daze. Who knew that not long after, Song Qingshu returned to the room and said to her with a smile, Now you don't have to worry about Tian Qingwen. Nan Lan was shocked and quickly asked, What did you do to her? Don't worry, I only hit her sleeping acupuncture point. Until tomorrow noon, she won't wake up. You naturally don't have to worry about her seeing any flaws. Song Qingshu held her shoulders and slowly laid her flat on the bed. Your body is weak, you can't endure such torment. Quickly go to sleep and recover your energy. You still say that? These 2 days you are like a bear every time. Just because I am someone else's wife, you don't care for me when you use me? Nan Lan's face had a trace of shyness and a trace of anger. Song Qingshu didn't expect that she would still take these words to heart. Feeling that it was funny, Song Qingshu also felt somewhat apologetic. He quickly apologized and coaxed her. Only then did Nan Lan gradually fall asleep. Song Qingshu then continued to cultivate. Chapter 223. When Nan Lan woke up the next day, although Song Qingshu's scent still lingered in her bed, he had long since disappeared. She sighed and got up to dress up. Looking at her rosy cheeks in the mirror, a trace of guilt flashed through her heart, but also a trace of sweetness floated in her heart. After leaving the Tian residence, Song Qingshu didn't immediately return to the Four Quarters Embassy. Instead, he walked alone on the streets of Xingjing. To save Xia Qingqing, to save Tian Guanong, to save the Red Flower Society, and to steal the 42-chapter sutra, Song Qingshu felt that there were already many scattered fragments in his mind, but he urgently needed an opportunity to link them together. Thus, he needed some quiet time to organize his thoughts. Suddenly, a commotion sounded in front of him. Song Qingshu raised his head and saw that he had unknowingly walked into the vicinity of Prince Bao's residence. A group of commoners were pointing at a notice and discussing it. The prince's residence is using 1,000 gold coins to seek a famous physician. I heard that many famous physicians have gone in but returned without any result. Could it be some kind of strange illness? I don't know about that. Who in the prince's residence has fallen ill? Some say it's the crown prince's consort, others say it's just an ordinary female member of the prince's residence. Heh, would an ordinary female member of the prince's residence spend 1,000 gold coins to seek a doctor? Song Qingshu curiously walked over to look at the notice on the wall. It turned out that there was a woman in the prince's residence who had contracted a strange illness. She had a high fever that wouldn't subside, accompanied by a chest ache. Many physicians had been invited, but they were all at a loss. It's just a fever. No matter how bad the ancient physicians were, they shouldn't be unable to treat something like this, right? Song Qingshu was astonished. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that illness? Looking at the notice on the wall, a victorious smile appeared on Song Qingshu's face. He had found the opportunity. At the Wanhao Inn in the eastern part of the city, Su Quan looked at Song Qingshu and smiled tenderly. Lord Song, you came to look for me so quickly. Did you miss me? Sure enough, before seeing her, hearing her voice made one's body go limp. She was charming yet sweet. She was obviously a temptress who could turn all living things upside down, but one could faintly feel the innocence of a young girl. Song Qingshu sighed in his heart. If Su Quan returned to the modern world and became a CV or something, I'm afraid she would be even more seductive than Ji Guanlin's voice. I don't believe that Wu Song could really bear it. The people of the divine dragon cult had a strange expression on their faces. The fat and thin Duda looked at each other. The two Marshall brothers were telepathically connected. Very quickly they started to communicate. Whore. Adulterer. Madam, you must be joking. This time, Song Mao wanted to discuss the matter of rescuing Tian Tian with your cult. Song Qingshu deeply agreed with the idea of pretending to be a prodigal son in front of a good family and pretending to be a gentleman in front of a whore. Su Quan looked at him in surprise. She felt strange that her charm technique did not seem to have any effect on him. She did not know if it was because of his profound skill or because he was really a modest gentleman. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Su Quan smiled and said, After I came back last night, I thought about it. The imperial residence is heavily guarded, and I felt that helping you to rescue Tian Tian was a good idea. Tian Guanong is too dangerous, and I'm not sure if Tian Guanong really knows about Prince Bao's plan. If I were to rescue him after suffering heavy losses, only to find out that young master was just using me, wouldn't I suffer a double loss? Her tender voice sounded rather wronged. I didn't ask you to use your honey trap. Song Qingshu cursed in his heart. This woman would only say a few words and she would already be flirting with him. He had to be careful, lest he fell into her trap. Suddenly Song Qingshu stared blankly. Although he could not be considered as having been in a field of 10,000 flowers, he was also not that kind of pure and innocent little virgin. If Su Quan wanted to seduce him, it would be a bit difficult. Why was she so cautious? Thinking about this, his entire temperament became more natural. Young master, you're making fun of me, Su Quan said, feeling wronged. When did I? Song Qingshu was stunned. I saw the corner of your mouth curl up just now. You must be laughing at me in your heart. Su Quan looked like she was about to cry. Even Lu Gaoxian and the other subordinates who were usually afraid of her couldn't help but feel their hearts waver. Song Qingshu frowned. He thought that he was in a hurry to complete his mission. Where would he have the time to take his time with her? He opened his mouth and said, Madam, you're beautiful, and your voice is even more beautiful. Although I would like to chat more with you, let's get down to business first. Su Quan's breathing stopped. Her seduction technique had been defeated by him time and time again. It gave her the illusion that she was being stared at like a monkey by him. She couldn't help but scoff and say, I've already said that saving Tian Guanong is too risky. We'll back out. Su Quan's voice had become clear and bright. Song Qingshu praised her in his heart and said with a smile, In the underworld, honesty is the most important. Aren't you afraid of ruining the reputation of the Divine Dragon Order? I won't admit it. What can you do to me? Su Quan smiled coldly. What if I use the 42-chapter sutra to cooperate with you? Song Qingshu didn't care that the other party's attitude had changed so quickly. He calmly threw out a condition that she couldn't refuse. As expected, when he said this, the breathing of the people from the divine dragon order in the room quickened. Su Quan suppressed the excitement in her heart and pretended to not care. It's just a Buddhist scripture. What use is it? Don't lie in front of a true person. If Madam continues to test me like this, I'll turn around and leave. I'll find someone else to cooperate with. After saying this, Song Qingshu actually walked out of the room. Wait. Su Quan knew that she had lost the initiative the moment she opened her mouth. However, as long as she could obtain the 42-chapter sutra, she couldn't care less. How do we cooperate? I'll give you something. Go find Hong Li and exchange it for the pure white flag's 42-chapter sutra. Hearing Su Quan's words, Song Qingshu's lips curled into a victorious smile. He turned around and looked at her. What item is so precious that it can be exchanged for the 42-chapter sutra in Hong Li's hands? Su Quan revealed an expression of obvious disbelief. Normal treasures naturally can't be exchanged for it. However, what if it's his grandson? Song Qingshu thought of the 2 infants he had saved in the rundown temple. He didn't think that his son would be of such great use now. Grandson of direct descent? Su Quan looked at him strangely. Fu Kangans Fujin doesn't have any children. Fu Kangans' real Fujin naturally didn't give birth to a boy or a girl. However, by chance, Fu Kangan had seduced a woman among the people and caused her to bear a pair of twins for him. Ma Chunhua, who had been kidnapped by bandits in the rundown temple, was a young girl yearning for love. When she saw Fu Kangan, the elegant young master of an aristocratic family, she became infatuated and actually gave birth to him. What was even more coincidental was that after this one night of romance, she became pregnant with Fu Kangan's children. Moreover, they were twins. If he didn't guess wrong, that group of bandits were probably Fu Kangan's subordinate. He probably remembered that he had previously taken advantage of a beautiful commoner woman and was lustful, so he sent people to fetch her back. It was a pity that he didn't know that he had such a pair of sons, causing his subordinates to almost kill his own sons. Are they really Fu Kangan's sons? Su Quan felt that it was too much of a coincidence and subconsciously suspected that Song Qingshu was lying to her again. Moreover, this kind of woman who can't even be considered a concubine, how can the children be considered as grandchildren of the first wife? When the time comes, you can try sending a letter over and you'll know. If it's fake, the people of the Wangfu will naturally ignore you. If they contact you, then it naturally proves that it's real. Song Qingshu said lightly, according to common sense, this pair of twins can only be considered illegitimate children, and their identities can't be shown in public. But coincidentally, Fu Kangan doesn't have any other sons. Fu Kangan is greedy and lustful, and has many concubines, but none of them gave birth to a son or daughter for him. There have long been various rumors and slanders in the Wangfu. It's very likely that this pair of twins will be Fu Kangan's only sons in this lifetime. As the crown prince of Prince Bao, Hong Li naturally won't just watch him die. When the time comes, it's most likely that Fu Kangan's Fujin will adopt these 2 children and announce to the public that they're the sons of the first wife's Fujin. Su Quan saw that his analysis was reasonable and was already somewhat convinced. But she quickly thought of another question. If that's the case, why don't you exchange for them yourself? From her point of view, Song Qingshu was a rare commodity at this time, but he just had to give it to the divine dragon cult. It was inevitable that people would be suspicious. I have other things to do and can't split myself, Song Qingshu explained unhurriedly. Even though there's a high possibility of using the twins to exchange for the 42-chapter sutra, Hong Li definitely won't be willing to be threatened by you. Once the twins are in his hands, I'm afraid that he'll set up an inescapable net to hunt you down. Great benefits mean great risk. Madam, it's best that you consider it carefully. Su Quan smiled tenderly. At least you have some conscience. I thought you'd deliberately avoid the risk. Don't worry, if my divine dragon cult can't even handle this kind of kidnapping and extortion, then we don't need to mingle anymore. Song Qingshu nodded his head in satisfaction. That's good, but I want half of the 42 chapter sutra. When the time comes, give me half, and I'll hand the twins over to you to deal with Hongli. So you're saying that you don't intend to hand the twins over to me first? Su Quan's voice turned cold. That's natural. Otherwise, when the time comes, you'll take the 42 chapter sutra and flee without a trace. Where will I go to find you? Song Qingshu looked into her eyes as if it was a matter of course. But do you know how much more difficult it will be for us to extort without the twins in our hands? Su Quan said angrily. That's your divine dragon cult's problem. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. I understand what you're planning. Su Quan had an expression of sudden realization. You just want to use us to divert the attention of the prince's residence and use the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain to make it easier for you to rescue Tian Guanong. As expected, I can't hide it from Madam. But this isn't called using, it's called working together, each taking what they need, Song Qingshu replied. Su Quan stared at him for a while, then suddenly smiled and said, All right, when the time comes, I wonder which half of the 42 chapter sutra does young master want? The first half, Song Qingshu said after a moment of hesitation. Oh? But I also want the first half, what should I do? How about I give you the second half? Su Quan said as she stared closely into his eyes. A hint of joy flashed across Song Qingshu's face, but he deliberately put on a helpless expression. A gentleman will help others achieve their goals. Since Madam wants it, then Madam can choose first. Forget it, since young master likes the first half, then take the first half. Su Quan smiled like a fox. This. Song Qingshu found it hard to hide his dejection. Let's talk about the distribution after the matter is done. Watching Song Qingshu disappear into the street, Lu Gaoxian closed the window and looked at Su Quan, saying, Madam, could it be that Song Qingshu deliberately tricked me just now, and what he really wanted was the first half? Chapter 224. Lu Gaoxian thought that women were indeed more ruthless than men, but he still felt the need to remind her. But if Song Qingshu doesn't give us Fu Kangans illegitimate children, we probably won't be able to escape the pursuit of Prince Bao's residence. Lu Gaoxian, where did your usual cleverness go? Why do we have to be led by the nose by Song Qingshu and do everything according to his arrangements? Su Quan's face was full of smiles, but her voice already carried a trace of coldness. Lu Gaoxian was alarmed and hurriedly bowed. This subordinate is slow-witted, please instruct me, madam. Since we're going to use the twins to exchange for the 42 chapter sutra, why do we have to wait for Song Qingshu to give us the twins? Don't we know that we can find them ourselves? Su Quan sneered. Madam means to find another pair of twins to pretend to be Fu Kangans' illegitimate children? Lu Gaoxian asked. That's not it. If Fu Kangans' illegitimate children aren't twins, we can naturally find a random infant to replace them. Unfortunately, he gave birth to twins of the same age at the last minute. The difficulty is no less than finding the real one. Su Quan lay on her side on the couch, her fingertips lightly tapping on her thighs. Clearly, she was in deep thought. Lu Gaoxian hurriedly lowered his head after a glance, thinking that this cult leader's wife was indeed a natural seductress. If he didn't want to live anymore, he would definitely try kissing her. Lu Gaoxian, your eyeballs are darting around, what exactly are you thinking about? Su Quan's half-smiling voice sounded by his ear, and cold sweat immediately dripped down Lu Gaoxian's forehead. He hurriedly said, I'm thinking about how to find the twins in Song Qingshu's hands. From what Madam said, you seem to have an idea. Su Quan chuckled. That's right, Song Qinshu has Fu Kangans' illegitimate children in his hands, so he naturally wouldn't bring them to the Four Quarters Embassy. The Four Quarters Embassy is filled with Hong Li's spies, and he isn't that foolish. Moreover, his subordinates were all men, and the babies needed milk every day. He would definitely find a wet nurse for the twins. If he were to find one in Xinjing City, it would be too conspicuous, and there would be a high chance of being discovered by the spies of Prince Bao's imperial residence. In that case, it would be impossible for him to bring the twins into Xinjing City. But his idea of using the twins to exchange for the 42-chapter sutra doesn't seem to have come up with it on the spur of the moment. Since he's been planning this for a long time, then the location of the twins can't be too far from him. Pass down the order. Have the brothers of the cult investigate the farmhouses on the outskirts of Xinjing, especially those who have just given birth to a child. Pay more attention and must find them as soon as possible. Yes. Lu Gaoxian and the others hastily withdrew from the room. In their hearts, they secretly admired this charming cult master's wife. However, when they thought of the ruthless methods she used to punish the old ministers of the cult, they couldn't help but be half happy and half worried. After leaving the Wanhao Inn, Song Qinshu hid his tracks along the way. He bought some strange items from a few grocery stores in Xinjing City. Finally, he arrived at a residential house. Making sure that there was no one around, he snuck in. The owners of the house were a husband and wife in their 40s. Song Qinshu hid in the shadows and silently observed them. He observed the words and actions of the two until the sun set in the west. Only then did he stealthily leave. Returning to the vicinity of the Four Quarters Embassy, Song Qinshu wasn't in a hurry to enter. Instead, he carefully examined the surrounding buildings of the Four Quarters Embassy. In the end, his gaze locked onto a nearby inn. While concealing his tracks along the way, he activated his qigong and climbed up the stairs. Glancing in the direction of the Four Quarters Embassy, he seemed to have understood something. Pressing his hand on the window, he exerted his strength and broke the latch inside. Then, he opened the window and jumped in. The moment he entered the room, he felt a gust of wind from a palm strike. The fragrance of a young lady lingered in the air. Song Qinshu dodged and hurriedly said, "Don't do anything, it's me." The young lady was clearly taken aback by his appearance. After a short moment of panic, she calmed down and asked, "Who are you?" Song Qinshu was taken aback. Taking a closer look, he realized that it was an unfamiliar and beautiful young lady. She was tall and slender, and her legs were long and slender. He hurriedly said awkwardly, "My apologies, I entered the wrong door." "Siener, what's wrong?" Soon, a valiant-looking young man rushed in from the neighboring room. Upon seeing Song Qinshu, he was clearly taken aback. The young lady hurriedly said, "Big brother, this person suddenly barged in from the window. Could he be a pervert?" Seeing the young lady's discreet blink, the young man came to a realization and flew into a rage. "Pervert, how dare you set your eyes on my younger sister?" After which, he charged forward with a palm strike. Song Qinshu was embarrassed. He didn't think that he would end up in such a situation. He could only dodge while explaining, "It's really a misunderstanding. I thought that a friend of mine was staying here." The young lady harumphed coldly. "You sure make it sound nice. What's the name of your friend? Call her out and let me confront her. I'm that friend of hers. I hope that the two of you can forgive me." A crisp voice suddenly sounded from the entrance. Song Qinshu looked up and saw Zhu Yanai in a green robe. Her female companion, who was dressed as a man, was standing at the door and looking at the people in the room with a frown. The young man and the young lady couldn't help but be taken aback. Song Qinshu took the opportunity to jump out of the battle and came to Zhu Yanai's side. He quickly said, "I wanted to find her." Zhu Yanai also nodded. "I live next to you. My friend here remembered the wrong room. Please forgive him." "I see." The young man and the young lady looked at each other and pretended to be impatient. Be careful next time. Then, they slammed the door. Zhu Yanai glanced at Song Qingshu with a faint smile and led him to her room. Do you always use such a sneaky method to break into a girl's room? Isn't it an accident? I thought you lived there. Song Qingshu was a little embarrassed after making such a big mistake. You thought I lived there? Zhu Yanai said lightly. What if I was taking a bath? Song Qingshu was embarrassed. It's broad daylight. Why are you taking a bath? When I was in the palace, I would take a bath at any time as long as I was happy. Besides, it's already dark. Zhu Nianji looked out of the window. It's already dark. Seeing Song Qingshu's hesitation, Zhu Yanai showed a faint smile. Okay, I was teasing you. By the way, how did you find this place? Song Qingshu heaved a sigh of relief and found a stool to sit down. I wanted to contact you, but I didn't know when you would respond. Recalling that you said that you tied a yellow cloth to the tree in the courtyard, I boldly guessed that you might be hiding in the vicinity of the Four Directions Embassy. I looked around, and the location of this inn was just right. Then, based on the angle of the courtyard, I deduced that you might be in your room. I didn't expect that there would be someone else staying there. Right? Do you know the background of this pair of siblings? When I exchanged blows with them earlier, I could sense that their cultivation isn't weak. To possess such strength at their age, they shouldn't be nameless individuals. You're obviously young, so why are you acting like an old man? Zhu Yanai rolled her eyes. I'm not sure either. The siblings seem to live in seclusion. According to the innkeeper, they seem to be merchants who came to Liaodong to buy ginseng. Merchants. Recalling the scene just now, the handsome man and the beautiful woman, Song Qingshu fell into deep thought. Why are you in such a hurry to find me? Zhu Yanai asked softly. It's mainly about saving Qingqing. I have a plan. In the next 2 or 3 days, I'm afraid I'll need you to accompany me to the prince's mansion. Speaking of Xia Qingqing, Song Qingshu's voice became quiet. The two of us are going to barge in just like that? Zhu Yanai looked at him doubtfully. Of course not. I've thought of a secret plan. Song Qingshu said. That's it? Zhu Yanai frowned. What are we going to do? Now is not the time to tell you. You'll know when the time comes. Song Qingshu didn't want to reveal his plan now. Zhu Mang looked at him blankly. A hint of anger surfaced on his face, but it quickly disappeared. If you don't trust your companions and think that you can accomplish everything by yourself, he said in an indifferent tone, the worst that can happen is another Xiang Yu who committed suicide at the Wu River, and not the Liu Bang who founded the Han Dynasty for 400 years. Song Qingshu fell into silence. Looking at the beautiful face of the beauty in front of him, he sighed softly. After all, you're the holy maiden of the Ming Dynasty. At least you'll tell me your concerns now, which is also a kind of progress. Hearing his words, a smile appeared on Zhu Yuai's face. She stretched her body and leisurely leaned on the bed. To win others' trust, you have to trust them first. Since you don't trust me, I'll trust you. I won't ask about your plan. When the time comes, I'll do whatever you want me to do. If you are scheming against me, like capturing me and handing me over to Kangxi, or trying to avenge the Ming cult, come, destroy my chastity, I'll admit it. Who told me to trust the wrong person? Looking at her smiling face, Song Qingshu felt as if he had come into contact with a territory that he had never touched before. Is this the bearing of the royal family? Song Qingshu was a little absent-minded. He understood that no matter in his previous life or now, due to the limitations of his identity, he naturally lacked something valuable. He had laughed at Luo Binghong for having a low vision, but he was the same. What? Are you touched by me? Zhu Yanai jumped off the bed, put her hands behind her back, and bent down to look into Song Qingshu's eyes. I'm wondering if the princess has ever considered marrying a husband. Song Qingshu raised his head and smiled. Zhu Yanai immediately blushed. She shrank back and said lightly, Don't think about it. I will never marry in this life. It's getting late, Prince Song, please go back. Hearing her order to leave, Song Qinshu smiled bitterly. Although he was still a little reluctant, he had to leave. Noticing that Song Qinshu had left the inn, Su Yin asked in a low voice, "Xian, why did you expose your martial arts just now? I thought he was a pervert. Who knew it was that bastard?" Yilu Nanxian pouted and said angrily, "Master Su, you really can't blame Xian in that situation." Yilu Qi hurriedly said, "Although it wasn't exposed, I'm afraid it has already aroused his suspicion. Let's go to another inn." Su Yin said. Chapter 225. Song Qinshu is in a mess right now. He doesn't have the energy to care about us. Even if we suddenly disappear, he'll only be suspicious. If we stay here, he can arrange people to spy on us. It'll be inconvenient for us to move around. Su Yin's voice was calm, as if he had everything planned out. "Oh right, that woman just now seems to be stronger than me and Xian." Yilu Qi had a deep impression of Zhu Yaoyao. Even though she was disguised as a man, her elegant temperament couldn't be hidden from the observant. "Let's put that woman aside for now. Let's go." Su Yin stood up and hid his entire body in the cloak. No one could see that he was wearing a mask. Yilu Qi and Yilu Nanxian quickly packed their luggage and followed. "Are they gone?" Zhu Nuo, who was next door, watched the three people hurriedly disappear through the window, and thoughtfully frowned. "Brother Song, you're finally back. I haven't heard from you since you went out last night. I was so worried about you." Seeing Song Qinshu walk in, Li Yuanji jumped up excitedly. Although Luo Bing didn't say anything, she also stared at Song Qinshu with a complicated expression. It was hard to tell whether it was concern or hatred. "Worried about me?" Song Qinshu smiled. "You're probably worried that no one will help you save your sweetheart if I die. Stinky brother, why are you so bad?" Li Yuanji spat and ran back to Luo Bing. "Sister Luo, help me say something." Luo Bing smiled unnaturally. "Say what?" She thought, "I've been played by your brother Song. What right do I have to say anything? Do you think we've been worried about him for a day and a night?" Li Yuanji held her arm and proudly raised her chin at Song Qinshu. "Of course not." Luo Bing blushed. When they slept together last night, they did talk a lot about Song Qinshu. But most of it was Li Yuanji talking and Luo Bing dealing with it casually. "Really?" Song Qinshu looked Luo Bing up and down. His stare made her uncomfortable. "So Sister Luo also cares about me. Who's your sister?" Luo Bing added in her heart. How could a younger brother treat his sister like that? "Sigh, you've been working so hard to find out more about your husband? I'm here to find out more about my sweetheart, but I'm greeted with such an attitude. What a tragedy." Song Qinshu let out a long sigh. "Brother Song, please take a seat." Li Yuanji obediently brought over a stool and placed it beside the bed. "Brother Song, you've worked hard. Let me massage your shoulders. You want to bribe me and find out Yu Yutong's whereabouts from me?" Song Qinshu sat down and felt the right amount of pressure on his shoulder. He grunted comfortably and said, "You don't say. I'm a sucker for that." Then he lifted his foot and placed it on Luo Bing's thigh. "Help me massage my foot too." Luo Bing frowned and immediately stood up. However, when she saw Li Yuanji winking at her, she had no choice but to suppress her anger and sit down again. Then, she pinched the flesh on Song Qinshu's thigh with both hands. "Hiss!" Song Qinshu sucked in a breath of cold air and sighed. "Pain and happiness." Li Yuanji giggled. "That must be because you're too annoying. Sister Luo couldn't stand it anymore and punished you. You should know that Sister Luo is recognized as a gentle, warm, virtuous, and considerate wife in the eyes of the Red Flower Society." Luo Bing felt her face burning. Would a gentle and virtuous wife sleep with another man behind her husband's back, even though she was half forced? Song Qinshu looked at Luo Bing, his eyes full of smiles. "Of course I know Sister Luo is a good wife, but it's a pity that we can only appreciate her on the surface. I'm afraid only fourth brother one can enjoy her most unreserved gentleness. Luo Bing heard his words and suddenly increased the strength of her hands. Of course, who asked you to be born a few years later? When you met Sister Luo, she was already married. You deserve to be unlucky. Li Yuanji didn't notice the turbulent undercurrent between the two and continued to add oil to the fire. Luo Bing couldn't stand it anymore and immediately interrupted her. She looked at Song Qingshu and said, "Let's ask him to tell us if he has any news about the Red Flower Society." Sigh, it's unfortunate news. Song Qingshu let out a long sigh. Luo Bing and Li Yuanji's hearts immediately tightened. They hurriedly asked, "Did something happen to Brother One, Yu Tong?" "Oh, that's not it," Song Qingshu replied. "Then what unfortunate news did you say?" The two women glared at him. "In a few days, I will go to the Wang mansion to save people. At that time, you will be able to see your husband and sweetheart. Isn't this unfortunate news for me?" Song Qingshu said gloomily. "Scoundrel, I don't care about you." Li Yuanji stopped pinching him and directly ran over to whisper to Luo Bing. "I knew it would be like this. It's too cruel to burn the bridge after crossing the river." Song Qingshu withdrew his foot. He didn't care how noisy the two women were and closed his eyes to rest. After some time, Li Yuanji's weak voice came. "Brother Song, aren't you going out tonight? Who was the one who said that she was worried about me after I left?" Song Qingshu's lips moved slightly. "In order to prevent you from worrying, I will sleep here tonight." "Ah!" Li Yuanji exclaimed. Luo Bing was not as shy as her. In any case, he had already experienced what needed to be experienced. Moreover, with Li Yuanji here, he would not dare to bully her. "Didn't you call me good brother very smoothly? Later, move some space on the bed and let me squeeze in." Song Qingshu looked at her and deliberately teased her. "How can I do that?" Li Yuanji said embarrassedly. It was naturally not a problem to joke with him, but to share a bed with a man, she really could not do it. Moreover, Sister Luo is also sleeping on this bed. She is a married woman. Aren't you afraid of ruining her reputation? Isn't it fine as long as we have a clear conscience? Sister Luo, don't you think so? Song Qingshu turned his face and stared into Luo Bing's eyes as he asked. Unable to stand his aggressive eyes, Luo Bing turned her face to the side. "Of course I don't care. When the time comes, he will sleep next to you." "Sister Luo, how can you be like this?" Li Yuanji did not think that Luo Bing would sell her out in the blink of an eye. She said in a bad mood, "Brother Song, find a guard to send a blanket over. I will sleep on the floor. Since Sister Luo does not mind, then let her sleep with you." "But I am afraid that fourth master one will mind." Song Qingshu said with a smile, "Forget it, I was just teasing you. I will sleep on the floor later." Although Li Yuanji felt that it was not good for her to be in the same room with a man, she remembered that she was with Luo Bing. At least she was not in the same bed with him. It was already a great victory, so she reluctantly acquiesced. "It's not that I don't have a place to sleep, but I have to wait for news. In order not to miss the opportunity, I will not leave this place for the next 2 days." Song Qingshu thought about it and explained. No matter how Song Qingshu explained, the two women felt strange with another man in the room when they were sleeping. However, Li Yuanji was still a young girl, and she had a good impression of Song Qingshu. Although she was a little uncomfortable at first, she quickly relaxed and fell asleep. Seeing her sleeping appearance, Luo Bing covered her forehead. This woman really? She trusts that demon so much. She doesn't even know that her chastity has been ruined while she is asleep. There was something that Luo Bing had always felt strange about. Why did Song Qingshu show such an evil side in front of her, but in front of Li Yuanji, he showed the brightest and most upright side? For a long time, because Yu Tong was infatuated with her, she always felt a little happy in her heart, even though she did not want to admit it. When she found out that Li Yuanji's love for Yu Tong was fruitless, She felt a faint sense of superiority in her heart, although she did not want to admit it. In the end, this pitiful sense of superiority was mercilessly shattered in front of Song Qingshu. She could clearly feel that Song Qingshu treated Li Yuanji much better than he treated her, but why? In terms of beauty, figure, and personality. She did not lose to Li Yuanji in any aspect. Was it because she was married? However, during those few intimate encounters, she could clearly feel that her identity as a wife seemed to bring a different kind of stimulation to Song Qingshu. What are you thinking about? You're so engrossed. When the terrifying voice rang in her ears, Luo Bing's first reaction was not to look at Song Qingshu, but to look at Li Yuanji, who was beside him. Li Yuanji's eyelashes trembled slightly, as if she was about to wake up. Song Qingshu stretched out his finger and poked her a few times. Li Yuanji let out a meaningless murmur and continued to sleep. I'm really curious. Are you afraid of me, or are you afraid that someone else will find out about our affair? Song Qingshu carefully squeezed between the two women and looked at Luo Bing with a smile. Affair. Luo Bing was about to faint from anger. She immediately turned her head away and ignored him. Could it be that it's not? Song Qingshu reached out a finger and hooked her face over. Although I forced you at first, you were very cooperative later on. You even enjoyed it. Stop talking. You're a demon. Luo Bing covered her ears and shouted. Thank you for your compliment. Song Qingshu stretched out his hand and wrapped it around her soft waist. He pulled her in front of him. I really wonder how you're going to live with your fourth master one in the future. Will your mind always be filled with happy days with me? Why are you doing this to me? Luo Bing's eyes were filled with tears, and her voice was already sobbing. Why? Song Qingshu smiled coldly. Do you know that because of a few words you said back then, my entire plan almost collapsed? Although I've found Xia Qingqing now, she's already the Fujin of Prince Bao. How do you think I should thank you? I know I've wronged you, but you've already taken your revenge. Why do you have to torture me like this? Luo Bing took the initiative to look at Song Qingshu's eyes for the first time. Torture you? Just think of it as my bad taste. Song Qingshu's eyes narrowed. When Tai Lai repaid kindness with ingratitude and seriously injured me with one palm strike. If it weren't for my good fortune, I would have died at the hands of my enemy that night because of my injuries. What he gave me, I should have returned it to him tenfold. It's just that when Tai Lai didn't make a sound after being tortured so many times in prison. I also know that he's a tough man. If I had taken my revenge on him directly, I'm afraid he wouldn't have minded. So I changed my revenge to his delicate wife. When Luo Bing heard his words, she was shocked. You want to tell fourth brother one about us? That's my plan. Noticing that Luo Bing's expression had changed, Song Qingshu smiled and said, But I haven't had enough fun yet. I probably won't tell him for a while. In the future, it'll depend on your performance. What performance? Luo Bing asked absent-mindedly. If you serve me well, I naturally won't be willing to tell him. Song Qingshu's fingertips slowly slid along the curve of her waist. You plan to blackmail me for the rest of your life? Luo Bing finally understood and felt that her life was full of darkness. Is there a problem? Count yourself. How many times have you and your wife harmed me, and how many times have I saved you? I don't think it's too much for me to take revenge on you like this. As long as you perform well, I'll promise you that I won't reveal our relationship to your husband. By then, you'll still be the warm and generous heroine Luo in people's eyes, and the gentle and virtuous wife in your husband's eyes. What else are you dissatisfied with? Song Qingshu's voice was full of evil. Don't say any more. Luo Bing's heart had completely collapsed. She felt that she seemed to be tempted by the other party's seemingly reasonable words. When she realized this, she felt even more pain. Since you're tempted, then perform well for me to see. Song Qingshu gently pressed his palm on her head and slightly exerted force. Luo Bing quickly realized what the other party wanted her to do. She subconsciously wanted to refuse, but the force from the top of her head indicated that the other party would not allow her to refuse. She could only sigh and crawl into the quilt. Chapter 226. Li Yuanji woke up before dawn the next day. She turned her head to see Song Qingshu sleeping on the floor and sighed in relief. She turned back to look at Luo Bing and felt that she seemed to be more beautiful than usual. She was a little depressed for a moment. No wonder Yu Yutong likes her more. She moved her feet and her face turned red. She felt something wet and cold down there. She recalled that she seemed to have had a very beautiful dream last night. She dreamed that she was in an empty courtyard. Li Yuanji curiously ran to the window and saw a man and a woman doing that kind of shameful thing. She subconsciously prepared to leave, but the woman inside suddenly turned her head. The beautiful face under the messy hair was actually Luo Bing. Li Yuanji was shocked and looked up to see who the man on top of her snow-white body was. Unfortunately, she didn't know whether it was because of the dream or something else. The man's face seemed to be trapped in a fog, and she couldn't see it clearly. Li Yuanji saw Luo Bing's obedient and cooperative look and subconsciously thought that the man was Wen Tai, but a voice in her mind told her that it wasn't. She was also worried that the other party was Yu Yutong, so she didn't know whether to leave or stay. In the end, she watched the whole process. Li Yuanji was a young girl and couldn't bear such a strong visual impact. She unconsciously felt her body go limp as if she was immersed in water. Finally, she unknowingly fell asleep. Why would I have such a shameful dream? Li Yuanji touched her face, confused and shy. She turned back to look at Luo Bing and thought to herself, I wonder if Sister Luo is really as shameless as in my dream. She's even willing to do such a shameful position. Li Yuanji's movement quickly woke Luo Bing up. She opened her eyes and looked at Li Yuanji. Although she was also ready to get up, her body was so limp that she really didn't want to move even half a finger, so she simply closed her eyes again. Because of Li Yuanji's presence last night, Luo Bing's body became even more sensitive due to psychological reasons. That kind of bone-chilling feeling even made her feel a little uncontrollable. I hope he can keep his promise. Luo Bing's eyes were half closed as a thought flashed through her mind, and she fell asleep in exhaustion. Seeing that Luo Bing's eyes were closed again, Li Yuanji turned her head to look out the window. The sky was still green, so she knew that it was still early. She lay down again and covered herself with the quilt. She twisted her legs and thought to herself with a red face, after Brother Song goes out today, I must take a bath, or else it will be too uncomfortable. When the first ray of sunlight shone through the window, Song Qingshu felt something and sat up. He drew a circle with his hands and slowly gathered the genuine qi in his limbs and bones into his dantian. Exhaling the turbid air from his mouth, he felt refreshed. He had not wasted his time singing every night. His joyous genuine qi had been greatly nourished and had recovered to 60% of its peak power. Although the quantity of his inner force was not as good as before, its quality was far better than before. Now that he had recovered 60% of his inner force, his strength had been fully restored. The joyous Zen is really a good thing. It can increase one's inner force by combining it with a woman's yin and yang. Presumably, any man would be able to practice diligently. However, the capacity of a person's dantian is limited after all. According to this trend, will it eventually reach a certain extent and no longer be able to grow? A trace of doubt flashed through Song Qingshu's mind. Brother Song, looking at the divine light in your eyes, your inner force must have improved to a higher level. What kind of martial arts are you practicing? How did you improve so much in one night? Li Yuanji sat by the bed while Luo Bing knelt behind her and helped her comb the braid on her head. I have to thank Sister Luo behind you. If it wasn't for her, my inner force wouldn't have improved so quickly. Song Qingshu deliberately glanced at Luo Bing and said with a smile, As for the martial arts that I practice, I'll practice with you in the future if there's a chance. Sister Luo, how did you help him practice? Ouch, it hurts. Li Yuanji had just opened her mouth to ask when she felt a few strands of her hair being pulled off by Luo Bing. I'm sorry, Sister Yuanji. Don't listen to his nonsense. He's practicing on his own. What does it have to do with me? Luo Bing's face was bright red as she hurriedly explained. Lord Song, Lord Song? At this moment, Zhang Kongnian's voice came from outside the door. Song Qingshu turned around to look at Li Yuanji and Luo Bing, who were on the bed. The two women hurriedly put down the bed curtain. At this moment, their clothes were untidy, revealing the white underwear underneath. Although they didn't mind being seen by Song Qingshu, if another man came in, they wouldn't be treated so well. Song Qingshu waved his hand and the blanket on the floor rolled into a ball and rolled under the bed. He didn't want his subordinates to see him sleeping on the floor. Seeing that the two women had also hidden themselves, he coughed and shouted, "Come in." Zhang Kongnian walked in with his head lowered. His eyes glanced at the bed curtain that was moving even though there was no wind and the two pairs of shoes on the floor. His heart was filled with disgust. This Lord Song really had this kind of style. Noticing his strange expression, Song Qingshu didn't think much of it and directly asked, "Is there something you need from me so early in the morning?" "That's right." Zhang Kongnian glanced at the side of the bed and hesitated for a moment. He came to Song Qingshu's side and said in a low voice, "The twins have been snatched away." "When did this happen?" Song Qingshu's heart moved. So the Divine Dragon Order had made a move. "About an hour ago, Lord specially ordered me to pay attention to the movements over there. When I received the news, I immediately came to report to Lord," Zhang Kongnian replied. "All right, I understand. You can go now. Don't tell anyone else about this." Song Qingshu waved his hand. "Yes." Zhang Kongnian's heart trembled. Having worked in the palace for many years, he naturally understood that there were secrets that could not be revealed everywhere. It was better to avoid trouble than trouble. Watching Zhang Kongnian disappear through the door, Song Qingshu thought to himself, "I didn't expect the Divine Dragon Order to be so powerful in Xingjing. I thought they would need at least tomorrow to find the twins. Little sister Yuanji, big sister Luo Bing, I have to go out for a while. I'm afraid I won't be back for a day or two." Song Qingshu took out some of the groceries he had bought yesterday from the cabinet, organized his luggage, and spoke to the bed. Luo Bing felt a chill run down her spine when he called her big sister Luo Bing. She thought that if she hadn't personally experienced it, she wouldn't have known that such an evil heart was hidden under his harmless appearance. "Good big brother, where are you going?" Li Yuanji was the best at making people happy. She had used this ability to coax Lu Feiqing into accepting her as a disciple and teaching her everything she knew. "You're such a sweet talker." Song Qingshu was also amused. "I know what you want to ask. The operation to rescue your man will begin now." "Good big brother, you're the best." Li Yuanji beamed while Luo Bing had a complicated expression on her face. She had been staying at Song Qingshu's place for the past few days. Although she had to endure his bullying at night, overall, she felt quite at ease. If when Tai Lai was rescued, how would she face her husband? Moreover, the Red Flower Society had prepared for her to use a honey trap. Could it be that after rescuing the Red Flower Society, she still couldn't escape the fate of returning to Song Qingshu's side? No. This time, Song Qingshu saved the entire Red Flower Society. The previous hatred should also be written off. As long as fourth brother doesn't know that I was, by Song Qingshu, it should be fine. Fourth brother, I'm sorry. For the future of the Red Flower Society, I have to hide this from you. Luo Bing's thoughts ran wild before she gradually calmed down. Yesterday, after returning to the Four Quarters Embassy, Song Qingshu had his guards head to the tavern nearby to investigate the whereabouts of the siblings, but they had already disappeared. Song Qingshu suspected that there was a third party monitoring him from the shadows. While he was being careful, Song Qingshu called for an inner palace guard to enter. After striking his sleeping acupoint and changing into his clothes, he said to the two ladies, "I've already told my subordinates that I will be cultivating for the next 2 days and will be staying in my room. No one is to disturb me. Work with me and try to create the illusion that I've always been in this room." "All right." The two ladies nodded. Li Yuanji said, "Big brother Song, be careful." "What about you?" Song Qingshu turned around and looked at Luo Bing with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. Luo Bing turned her head away. After a moment of silence, she said in a voice as quiet as a mosquito, "You have to be careful." Song Qingshu's interest was piqued. He sat back down and looked at the two ladies with a smile. "This trip is bound to be fraught with danger. Let me imagine a scenario. If I save your man, I will die. If I don't save him, I will be able to escape successfully. Do you want me to save him or not?" Li Yuanji's face paled. After a moment of hesitation, she shook her head. "If that's the case, Big Brother Song, don't save Yu Yutong. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest easy if you lose your life after saving him. If Yu Yutong dies, I'll just die with him. This lass has a conscience." Song Qingshu turned to look at Luo Bing and asked, "What about you, big sister Luo? You save fourth brother." Luo Bing's answer made Song Qingshu's face turn cold. However, she didn't notice any of this and continued, "If you die, I'll die with you." It turned out that she no longer knew how to face her former husband. She had long wanted to die and hoped that Song Qingshu could save Wentai so that she could make up for her guilt. Li Yuanji didn't expect Luo Bing's answer to be this and immediately looked at her strangely. Hearing Luo Bing's words, Song Qingshu was also taken aback. Then, he burst out laughing. "Don't worry, I'm not as useless as you men. I guarantee that I can save them without getting myself injured." Chapter 227. Song Qingshu took a bronze mirror and placed it on the table. He moved a stool and sat down. He opened the bag of groceries that he carried with him and started fiddling with it. Not long after, the handsome young man in the mirror disappeared and was replaced by a wrinkled, weather-beaten middle-aged man. Song Qingshu turned around and looked at his master. Song Qingshu nodded. It was already difficult for others to tell the difference between the two of them with the naked eye. After putting the two under the bed, Song Qingshu sat cross-legged on the bed and started to practice his qi. After an unknown amount of time, there was a hurried knock on the door. Song Qingshu opened his eyes and a proud smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "Sure enough, you're here. Who is it?" Song Qingshu pretended to be unsteady and staggered to open the door. He saw a group of soldiers in bright armor. "Officers, this is?" Song Qingshu put on a humble smile. "Are you blind?" A soldier on the side ran forward and pointed at the leader and said, "Old man Lu, this is the #1 expert in Prince Bao's mansion, Chief Sai. Forget it, he's just a commoner. What does he know about experts?" The one called Chief Sai waved his hand casually. "Old man Lu, His Royal Highness invites you over." "Master, did I do something wrong?" Song Qingshu's face showed a hint of fear and said timidly, "You'll know when you get there. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Oh right, bring your usual weapons." Chief Sai waved his hand impatiently. All right. Two soldiers escorted Song Qingshu back to the house. They picked up a box from the cabinet and pressed it against the door. Along the way, Song Qingshu did not speak a word. He looked like a coward who was afraid of death. In the end, they entered Prince Bao's residence. After a few turns in the Prince Bao's mansion, Song Qingshu was brought to a hidden courtyard. Hongli had been waiting in the room for a long time. Glancing at Song Qingshu, Hongli pointed at the table at the side and said, "Old Lu, I heard that your imitation skills are the best in the city. Look at that scripture over there. Can you replicate it?" Trembling with fear, Song Qingshu came to the table. On top of the table was an exquisite brocade box. Inside the brocade box was a white-covered Buddhist scripture, 42 Chapter Sutra. He carefully picked it up and casually flipped through a few pages. Song Qingshu's gaze froze. It really is that Zhengbai Qi's 42-chapter sutra. He turned around and respectfully answered, "It can be replicated." "That's good." Hong Li stood up and motioned for the guard at the side to bring the gold ingots on the plate to him. "If you can copy this Buddhist scripture as soon as possible, these 2 ingots of gold will be yours. If Ben Wang can see the difference in the copied thing, heh. Hong Li did not finish, but the threat in his tone was self-evident. "This lowly one is in this line of work." "No problem at all," Song Qingshu bowed and replied humbly. "All right, Chief Sai. I'll leave this to you. Keep your eyes on him. Do not move even half a step away. Do you understand?" Hong Li instructed Chief Sai before he left. "This subordinate understands. Farewell, Royal Highness." The group of people in the room quickly bowed to Hong Li. After saluting, Song Qingshu took this opportunity to, with lightning speed, take out a sutra book he had prepared earlier from his bosom and exchange it for the real 42-chapter sutra. When Chief Sai came to his side and monitored him as he replicated the scripture step by step, Song Qingshu could not hide the pride in his heart. The last time when he bargained with Su Quan's original intention was to numb Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu was also hiding his true motive. From the beginning, he did not plan to split the spoils with Su Quan. Firstly, he did not believe that the crafty Shen Long Jiao people would obediently give him half of it. Secondly, he did not believe that with the Shen Long Jiao's ability, they could really get the 42-chapter sutra from Hong Li's hands. Song Qingshu simulated in his mind if he was in Hong Li's position and encountered the Shen Long Jiao people who used his only grandson to exchange for the equally precious 42-chapter sutra. How would he handle it? The residence of Prince Bao was powerful and had many masters. Although they had the ability to catch all the Shen Long Jiao people in Xingjing City, it was hard to guarantee that 1 or 2 of them would not slip through the net. Using the real 42-chapter sutra to exchange with the other party would be too risky. After thinking about it, Song Qingshu felt that Hong Li's most likely choice was to directly substitute the real one. He would use a fake scripture book to replace the real scripture book. As long as it was done to perfection, the Shen Long Jiao people would not be able to tell it was the real one. By the time he got his grandson back, Hong Li would be able to hunt down the Shen Long Jiao people in Wuji without any fear. Although Hong Li might have some other simple and crude choices, Song Qingshu had never underestimated the intelligence and wisdom of those top people in this world. Since Hong Li was able to reach this position, the stratagem that Song Qingshu could come up with, he would certainly be able to think of it as well. Therefore, Song Qingshu decisively put all his chips on this possibility. On the surface, he was haggling over every penny with the Shen Long Jiao people on how to distribute the profits after this, but in reality, he had secretly inquired about Old Man Lu, who was the most famous bookmaker in Xingjing City. He spent more than half a day observing his behavior and habits, as well as his workflow. When he received the news that the Shen Long Jiao people had kidnapped the twins, he immediately disguised himself and replaced him, waiting for the Prince Bao's summons. Since he had already stolen the real scripture book and put it in his pocket, Song Qingshu could naturally copy it leisurely. In the present age, perhaps only Emperor Xuanzhi, Wei Xiaobao, and Shuang knew the secret of the 42-chapter sutra. Other people like Kangxi and Hong Li, even if they knew that there was a great treasure hidden inside, they would not know that the map was on the shredded sheepskin inside the cover of the scripture book. It was true that the Shen Long Jiao people could not distinguish between the real and fake scriptures, but could Hong Li do the same? Of course, as a precaution, not only did Song Qingshu hide the fake sheepskin inside the fake scripture book, when he deliberately flipped through the scripture book in front of Hong Li just now, Song Qingshu had already discovered the marks that Hong Li had secretly made on the book. There was a crease on one of the pages, and there were also light scratches on a few characters. Even if you are as crafty as a ghost, don't you still have to drink the water that Laozi washes my feet with? Because of Xia Qingqing's matter, Song Qinshu did not have a good impression of Hong Li. While he was cursing in his heart, he left the same mark on the fake scripture book without leaving any trace. A few hours later, Hong Li returned to the room. He looked at the two identical scriptures and nodded his head in satisfaction. Suddenly, he frowned and asked, "Which one is the real one?" Chief Steward Sai and Song Qinshu pointed at the one in Hong Li's right hand at the same time. Hong Li threw the fake scripture book to one side and calmly flipped through the scripture book in his right hand. He found the secret code that he had left on the scripture book in advance. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. He revealed a trace of a smile and said, "Take him away first." "Yes." Chief Steward Sai led Song Qinshu out. Song Qinshu pondered in his heart. Hong Li would not kill him to silence him, would he? This was also the only thing that he was worried about. If the other party really wanted to make a move, how could he escape without alerting Hong Li? Fortunately, the other party did not seem to have this intention. Chief Steward Sai led Song Qinshu to a room and said, "You are not allowed to leave the residence during this period of time. You will stay here for the time being." "May I ask, Master Official, how long will this lowly one be staying here?" Song Qinshu behaved like a frightened commoner. He even quietly stuffed a gold ingot that Hong Li had rewarded him into Chief Steward Sai's hand. Chief Steward Sai's expression became much better. "I didn't expect you to be so tactful. Don't worry. After this period of time, you will be released from the residence. I am not too sure about the specific time, but I will inform you as soon as possible." "Thank you, Chief Steward Sai." "Thank you, Chief Steward Sai." Song Qinshu was moved to tears as he sent him away. Not long after, Song Qinshu opened the door and was about to go out when a soldier stopped him at the door. "What do you want?" "This lowly one wants to go to the toilet." Song Qinshu smiled and said, "Follow me." The soldier looked at him in disdain and let him out. His mouth kept muttering, "Yes." Song Qinshu followed behind the soldier. Although he looked like he was bowing, the corner of his eyes was still glancing around. Suddenly, his body trembled. Song Qinshu noticed that there were a few soldiers standing next to a fake hill. There seemed to be a dark hole behind it. His heart moved and he walked over there. "What are you doing?" Noticing that Song Qinshu was walking over, the few soldiers took out their swords and looked at him vigilantly. "I am looking for the toilet," Song Qinshu said timidly. His eyes kept glancing inside. "Are your dog eyes blind? Can't you see what place this is? Do you want to live in it too?" The few soldiers scolded. "Brothers, I am sorry. Chief Steward Sai asked me to look after this old man. I was not paying attention and he got lost." The soldier who led the way just now hurriedly ran over and apologized to the few guards. "This time, because of Chief Steward Sai's face, I will not pursue this matter. Next time, be careful and keep an eye on him." The guard scolded and waved his hand to signal the two to leave quickly. "What kind of bullshit is this? They are just a few guards. How dare they be so arrogant?" As soon as the two left the guard's line of sight, the soldier scolded. "Sir, it is all this lowly one's fault. I caused you to offend a few superiors." Song Qinshu quickly apologized. "Bah!" the soldier scolded. "They are just a few prison guards. Bullshit superiors." "Yes, yes, yes." Song Qinshu nodded his head, as he looked back thoughtfully at the fake hill, firmly memorizing the terrain in his mind. After returning to his room, Song Qinshu rummaged through a few things in his bag. After thinking for a moment, he got up and walked out. "You want to take a dump again?" Seeing him walk out again, the soldier guarding the door suddenly became angry. "Sir, please calm down. It is just that when this lowly one helped the prince forge the Buddhist scriptures, I seemed to have found something strange in the scriptures. At that time, I did not dare to say it. Now that I think about it, I feel that it is necessary to report it." Song Qinshu hurriedly explained. The soldier's eyes lit up. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "You stay here. I will go find Chief Steward Sai." Song Qinshu nodded. Looking at the soldier's figure disappear at the end of the corridor, he thought, in today's world, a subordinate will only inform his superior if he is very sure of the source of the information. Otherwise, he will just listen to the wind and disturb his superior with some false information. After a few times, he can no longer be a subordinate. Chief Steward Sai looks like a wily old fox. I hope he will not be so careless and directly report it to Hong Li. Not long after, the sound of footsteps could be heard in the corridor. It was accompanied by the voice of Chief Steward Sai reprimanding his subordinate. "How can you be so careless? You let him stay in the room alone. What if old Lu took the opportunity to run away?" When Chief Steward Sai saw Song Qinshu, he stopped reprimanding his subordinate. He waved his hand and ordered his subordinate to leave first. Looking at Song Qinshu, his eyes lit up. "I heard that you discovered the secret of the scriptures?" As Hong Li's confidant, he naturally knew how important this scripture was to Hong Li. If he were to discover the secret of this scripture and report it to his superior, it would be a great merit. "Yes, when this lowly one was forging the scriptures, I discovered." Song Qinshu lowered his head. His voice was getting softer and softer. Chapter 228. I found out the time of your death, Chief Sai. Song Qinshu coldly smiled and reached out his hand to grab his throat. Originally, with Chief Sai's martial arts skill, as the #1 martial artist in Xinjiang, although he was weaker than Song Qinshu, he should still be able to resist. Unfortunately, he didn't expect that the sickly old man Lu was actually a martial arts master. Caught off guard, his vital point was tightly grabbed. He. Chief Sai's face turned red. He wanted to call for help, but he only made this kind of meaningless sound. His hands grabbed everywhere, but he couldn't touch Song Qinshu at all. "To be the first person I killed, you should be able to rest in peace." Song Qinshu sighed and twisted his wrist. With a kacha, Chief Steward Sai's neck had already been broken by him. He fell to the ground with a thud and his eyes bulged out. It was obvious that he had died with grievances. "Sir, what happened?" When the guard outside heard the sound, he knocked on the door. "Nothing." Song Qinshu imitated the voice of the Chief Sai and said. After that, Song Qinshu sat at the table and began to remix the medicinal paste of the human skin mask. With Chief Sai here, it was easier to make. After smearing the medicinal paste on his face, it quickly dried and took shape. Song Qinshu tore it off and put it on his face. Then, he put old Lu's mask on Chief Sai's face. After swapping the two people's clothes, Song Qinshu checked them. When he felt that there was no flaw, he opened the door and walked out. "Chief Sai, this?" The guard was about to speak, but when he saw old Lu lying on the ground in the room, his face couldn't help but change. "Wang Ye asked me to eliminate all hidden dangers, so I sent him on his way. Later, carry him and bury him quietly. Don't let anyone know. I'm sure you know the rules of the Fu." Song Qinshu patted the guard's shoulder. The guard was in a cold sweat. His heart was wondering if Chief Sai heard old Lu's secret and killed him to silence him. Then, wouldn't I be in danger? From the corner of his eyes, he glanced at Chief Sai's palm that was placed on his shoulder. Every time Chief Sai patted him, the guard's face would turn a shade paler. Finally, seeing Chief Steward Sai disappear into the distance, the guard's body went limp. He felt that his back was completely drenched in cold sweat. He heaved a long sigh of relief and dragged old Lu up, preparing to find a place to bury him. It was a pity that Chief Sai, the #1 expert in Xinjiang City, had died so quietly. Song Qinshu followed his memory and went all the way to the rockery. He swaggered over. When the guard saw his appearance, he quickly bowed and saluted. "Subordinate greets Chief Sai." Song Qinshu snorted noncommittally. "By Wang Ye's order, I want to see the criminal." Chief Sai, please. A group of guards quickly opened the prison door and respectfully made way for them. Chief Steward Sai was the favorite of His Highness, so when he said that he was following His Highness' orders, this group of people naturally did not doubt him. I have something to say to the criminal, all of you can leave first. Entering the prison cell, Song Qingshu waved his hand and let all the prison guards leave first. Then, he went from cell to cell to observe the different rooms inside. Finally, he found Tian Guanong, who was on the verge of death, in one of the inner cells. His entire body was covered in blood, and there was not a single piece of intact flesh on his body. Song Qingshu frowned when he saw this. He squatted beside him and shook his body. Brother Tian, Brother Tian? Tian Guanong gradually woke up. He glanced at Song Qingshu and said indifferently, so it's Chief Steward Sai. What business do you have with me? There was actually no anger in his voice. Song Qingshu snorted. Do you want to go out? Go out? Tian Guanong's eyes lit up but quickly dimmed. Go out to do what? Could it be that you don't miss your wife Nan Lan and your daughter Tian Qingwen? Song Qingshu thought, could it be that the days of torture had made him want to die? Nan Lan? Tian Guanong finally had a reaction, but he quickly became discouraged. But I am now a cripple, what use is there in missing her? Cripple? Song Qingshu asked in confusion. Chief Sai, why do you ask when you already know the answer? Tian Guanong looked at him and revealed his bloody lower body. His Highness had already ordered me to castrate. As he spoke, he felt sorrow and actually started sobbing. Song Qingshu was instantly dumbfounded. He didn't expect Tian Guanong to be so miserable. After a moment of silence, he said, who said that a man is a cripple after being castrated? Sima Qian, who wrote records of the grand historian, the invention of papermaking Kailun, and the great eunuch Zheng, he who sailed to the west 7 times of the Ming dynasty, which one of them didn't leave their names in history, who would dare to say that they were cripples? Song Qingshu saw that Tian Guanong actually didn't move and quickly changed the topic. There's also Yu Chaoan of the Tang dynasty and Wei Zhongxian of the 9,000 years old of the former Ming dynasty. Which one of them wasn't physically crippled, but not mentally crippled? They were below 1 and above tens of thousands, meddled in political affairs, intimidated hundreds of officials, and had groups of wives and concubines. Who would dare to say that they were cripples? Tian Guanong raised his head and mumbled, not bad, I still have a chance, Song Qingshu was speechless. As expected of a bad person. Positive examples couldn't motivate him, but these evil villains made him pull himself together. This is a snow ginseng jade toad pill. It's useful for your injuries. Take it quickly. Song Qingshu brought a pill to Tian Guanong's mouth. Tian Guanong looked at him warily. He suddenly remembered that he was already in a situation worse than death. If it was poison, he would just die. He took the pill and swallowed it. He immediately felt a wave of heat rising from his lower abdomen. Song Qingshu stretched out his palm and placed it on his back. I'll help you digest the medicine first. When you temporarily regain your ability to move, I'll send you out. Feeling the endless flow of true energy coming from his back, Tian Guanong hurriedly circulated his qi to heal his injuries. Why did Chief Steward Sai save me? A few years ago, I received a great favor from Song Qingshu. He came to Xinjiang as an imperial envoy and found out that you were being tortured by His Highness because of him. Thus, he tried to find a way to save you. Later, he coincidentally contacted me. Song Qingshu said in a deep voice. Aren't you betraying His Highness by doing this? When Tian Guanong heard that Song Qingshu had sent people to save him, he had mixed feelings in his heart. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have been imprisoned. However, when he found out that he was in trouble, he tried to save him at the first moment. He didn't know whether he should hate him or thank him. I have to repay the favor of saving my life. I naturally have a way to hide it from His Highness. Brother Tian, you don't have to worry about me. Just calm down and absorb the medicine. Song Qinshu answered. After the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, Song Qinshu withdrew his palm and stood up. We can't stay here for long. Brother Tian should be able to walk by himself now. Let's leave the imperial residence first. All right. Tian Guanong hurriedly nodded and staggered behind Song Qinshu. Every step he took caused his face to turn pale from the pain, and beads of sweat rolled down his face. However, when he thought about whether he could escape or not, he could only grit his teeth and persevere. Chief Steward Sai, this is? Seeing Tian Guanong behind Song Qinshu, the guards at the door were shocked. It's His Highness' orders. I'll bring him out. You don't need to ask. Song Qinshu took out a token and said indifferently. He thought that this Chief Steward Sai really saved him a lot of effort. He didn't think that he would have Hong Li's token on him. Otherwise, he would have to spend a lot more effort to save Tian Guanong. Yes. The guards' hearts trembled and they laughed. This Tian Guanong is already a cripple. He naturally has no value now. Hearing the laughter of this group of low-ranking guards who he usually didn't care about, Tian Guanong's body trembled. His nails dug into his flesh. He secretly swore in his heart, Tian Guanong will definitely take revenge for this. The journey out of the imperial residence was unimpeded. Song Qinshu pointed at the carriage that was already prepared at the side and said to Tian Guanong, Brother Tian, I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't see you off. After you drive this carriage back to the imperial residence, bring your wife and daughter to the Five Lakes sect in the east of the city to find their sect master, Sang Feihong. Song Ngong has already told her that they will escort you out of Xingjing City. Now that you can no longer stay in Liaodong, Sect Master Sang will escort you to Yanjing City. Song Ngong will arrange everything for you there. It turned out that Song Qinshu had saved Sang Feihong once in Zhang Zhaozhong's residence. After that, Sang Feihong came to him to repay his kindness. Song Qinshu thought for a while, and made an agreement with her to escort them out of the city. Thank you, Chief Sai, for saving us today. Tian Guanong looked at Song Qinshu and felt a little choked. Ever since he was imprisoned, his old friends in the officialdom all turned their backs on him and hid him when he was down. He didn't expect that Chief Sai, who he had no friendship with in the past, would lend a helping hand. If you want to thank someone, thank Song Ngong. Song Qinshu snickered in his heart and turned to walk towards the imperial residence. He had only taken a few steps when he thought of something and called out to Tian Guanong, Brother Tian, Sect Master Sang of the Five Lakes sect only knows your wife, Nanlan. Brother Tian, please don't go looking for her alone. It turned out that Song Qinshu was worried that Tian Guanong's nature was cold. If he abandoned his wife and daughter at this critical moment, wouldn't his efforts be in vain? Thank you, Chief Sai, for the reminder? Tian Guanong was stunned. He nodded and drove the carriage back to his own imperial residence. When he re-entered the imperial residence, Song Qinshu felt strange. Why didn't he see the people of the Red Flower Society in the prison just now? Forget it, time was of the essence and he couldn't save them. He should go look for Xiaqingqing first. Song Qinshu hurriedly walked without any obstruction until he arrived at the entrance of the imperial residence's inner court. Chief Sai, don't tell me you don't know the rules? Other than the imperial residence and the crown prince, no one else is allowed to enter the inner court of the imperial residence. Chief Sai, don't tell me you don't know the rules? Song Qinshu turned to look. He seemed to have seen this person at the banquet before. He was the third expert under Prince Bao, Golden Claw Iron Hook, Baizhen. According to Zhang Zhaozhong, Baizhen's Eagle Claw art was even better than Chief Sai's. All these flashed through his mind. Song Qinshu quickly said, So it's official, Bai. I'm sorry, I was thinking about something just now and got a little muddle-headed. It's all right, it's all right. Baizhen said with a fake smile, but he was extremely resentful in his heart. This chief Sai's martial arts was not even as good as his. Just because he was from Manchuria, he gained the imperial residence's trust. On the other hand, he could only look after the imperial residence here. Song Qingshu turned around and walked towards the imperial residence. He thought to himself, I thought I could use my identity as Chief Sai to sneak in and look for Qingqing more easily. I didn't expect, it seems like I can only carry out the plan. Chapter 229. Song Qingshu came to a room. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, he stretched out his hand and knocked on the door 9 times in a hurry. Then, he knocked on the door heavily. The person inside received the strange signal that he had arranged beforehand, and the door quietly opened a gap. Entering the room, Song Qingshu asked, Is everything ready? Yes, but do you really know medicine? The voice was very pleasant. It was the 9th princess of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yanai. I don't know. Looking at the banner on the table with the words, treating difficult and complicated diseases, and a few medicine baskets, Song Qingshu smiled with satisfaction. It was hard for a princess like her to prepare these things. If you don't know how, do you dare to take the exam? Zhu Yanai was so angry that she laughed, waiting for Song Qingshu's explanation. I don't know how to treat normal illnesses, but I have a 70% chance of treating the illness that Prince Bao's mansion is looking for, Song Qingshu replied. 70%? Zhu Yanai thought it was not low. What illness is that you are so confident? I don't know. Song Qingshu shrugged. You don't know? Zhu Yanai threw the things in her hands angrily, sat on the bed and sulked. You are still keeping it a secret at this time. You go to the mansion yourself, I'm not going. Oh, my good princess, don't give up at this time. Song Qingshu panicked and hurriedly ran over to apologize. I'm really not sure what illness that woman has. It's just a guess. If I'm wrong, I'll lose face. It doesn't matter if I'm wrong. With our Qinggong, I don't think the people of Prince Bao's mansion can stop us. Zhu Yong turned his head and looked at him. What kind of illness do you think it is? Song Qingshu felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by her beautiful eyes. He said awkwardly, This illness, I am a little embarrassed to talk about it. What illness is it? You are making me anxious. The more Song Qingshu said, the more curious Zhu Yanai became. Move your ear closer. Song Qingshu beckoned. Zhu Xiaoxiao hesitated for a moment, but her curiosity overcame her reserve, and she leaned over. Looking at the fair and translucent ears in front of him, as well as the delicate platinum earrings swaying gently, Song Qingshu was momentarily dazed. He quickly recovered and quickly whispered a few words in her ear. Perhaps it was because of the hot breath exhaled from Song Qingshu's mouth, or because she heard those words, Zhu Xiaoyi suddenly sat up straight as if she had been startled. She looked at him with a strange expression and said, How do you know about this kind of thing? A little. Song Qingshu was also a little embarrassed. In the modern world of his previous life, women would regard him as a considerate man if he knew these things. But in ancient times, it was hard to avoid feeling that a man like him knew these things. Well, since you know how to treat it, we can give it a try. Zhu Yuehua was also quite uneasy. Chapter 228. A strange illness? We were delayed in the mansion just now, we have to hurry, or else we won't make it. Song Qingshu was worried that the dragon god cult had already started to take action, and if he arrived too late, he might not be able to enter the mansion. He quickly picked up a human skin mask that he had prepared beforehand and stuck it on his face. Then, he stuck a few strands of his beard onto it and put on a clean and plain Taoist robe. Soon, Song Qingshu looked like a traveling doctor with the air of a sage. Tightening his belt, Song Qingshu turned around and found that Zhu Xiaoxiao was staring at him in shock. He hurriedly said, Why don't you change your clothes? How can I change if you are here? Zhu Xiaoxiao angrily stamped her foot. Song Qinshu also felt that he was too impulsive, so he quickly turned around and said, "Time is running out, I still have to modify the human skin mask, in case the people in the mansion see through me. Just change, I promise I won't peek." Zhu Xiaoxiao was no longer the princess who blushed whenever she approached a man. These years of life had changed her a lot, and she was not too bashful. She directly said, "Okay, but if I don't call you, you are not allowed to turn around. By the way, when you modify the mask, don't use a mirror." Sorry, I really didn't mean it." Song Qinshu was stunned, and quickly put down the mirror in his hand. He touched the mask with his hand, and after fixing a few flaws, Song Qinshu felt that no one would be able to recognize his true identity. Although the faint voice behind him at first made him daydream for a while, Song Qinshu quickly realized the danger of this operation, and focused on the next action plan, slowly calming down. "All right." Zhu Xiaoxiao's voice came from behind, and Song Qinshu turned around. In front of him was no longer the beautiful and refined ninth princess, but a delicate medicine boy. "Really good." Song Qinshu nodded with satisfaction. "Later, try not to talk. No one should be able to see that you are a woman disguised as a man. Wait." Zhu Xiaoxiao had been wandering in Jianghu for many years, and it was quite inconvenient for her to be a woman, so she often disguised as a man. After a while, she had mastered the skill of disguising as a man. Seeing Song Qinshu walking towards her, she could not help but be stunned. As Song Qinshu was getting closer and closer to her, Zhu Xiaoxiao subconsciously wanted to step back, but she did not expect that a voice came into her ears. "Don't move." There was a hint of convincing in the voice, and Zhu Xiaoxiao believed that he would not do anything bad to her, so she was relieved to stand where she was. When she noticed that Song Qinshu's hand was reaching for her ear, she understood what he was going to do. It turned out that she was careless and forgot to take off her earring. Soon, she felt a numbing sensation in her earlobe, and then Song Qinshu's voice sounded. "There are two major flaws in disguising as a man. One is the Adam's apple, and the other is the ear hole. Your collar is very high, so the Adam's apple is naturally not a problem, but the ear hole is too obvious. I will apply medicine paste on it, so it should not be seen in a short time." Song Qinshu gently rubbed the round earlobe. "However, the ear hole is too obvious. I will apply medicine paste on it, so it should not be seen in a short time." Feeling that it was cold and smooth, he secretly praised in his heart. "Ninth young lady, your earring." After dealing with the ear hole, Song Qinshu spread out his hand and took off the earring and placed it in front of Zhu Xiaoxiao. Zhu Xiaoxiao's pretty face was expressionless, and she said lightly, "You can take it. I don't want something that has been touched by a man." Song Qinshu was stunned, thinking that he had touched her ear just now. "Since it is a gift from ninth young lady, it would be disrespectful for me to refuse." After saying that, he put it in his arms. Zhu Xiaoxiao looked at him grumpily, and felt strange in her heart. Why did it seem that she gave him a token of love? She did not want to continue this topic, so she quickly asked, "Do you have to disguise me as a male medicine boy? Isn't it more convenient to be a female medicine boy later?" Actually, it would be more convenient to be a female medicine boy, but Hongli and Fu Kangon are both lechers. Moreover, the ninth young lady is so beautiful. If she appeared in the form of a woman, it would inevitably arouse their lust. Who knows, it might cause unnecessary trouble. Song Qinshu smiled bitterly. Since ancient times, women had always been creatures that attracted hatred. The more beautiful they were, the more hatred they could attract. Hearing his natural praise, Zhu Xiaoxiao's face turned red, and she grabbed the medicine box on the table and said, "Let's go quickly." After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, a wandering Taoist came to the prince's mansion, followed by a handsome little medicine boy. The Taoist looked at the notice on the wall, and directly went forward and tore it down. The guard on the side was shocked and angry. You? What about me?" Song Qingshu yawned. Since I dare to take the notice, I naturally have the ability to cure this disease. Don't talk nonsense, go in and report. The guard hesitated for a moment, and finally sent one of his companions to report. The rest of them stared at the two of them. If there was an order to punish them, they could immediately control the two of them. Fu Kangon was originally in the mansion discussing with Hong Li about how to save his son. Suddenly, a guard came in to report that the notice was torn. Fu Kangon was stunned. Hong Li said, "You go and have a look first. I will discuss with them, and then I will inform you." Fu Kangon nodded, hurried to the side hall, and asked his subordinates to invite Song Qingshu and Zhu Xiaoxiao in. Looking at the handsome Fu Kangon, Song Qingshu thought of what happened in Shanghai Pass, and secretly sighed in his heart. While he was looking at Fu Kangon was also looking at Song Qingshu and Zhu Xiaoxiao. From Fu Kangon's point of view, Song Qingshu looked like an immortal, so he might really have some ability. But when his gaze shifted to Zhu Xiaoyi, he immediately became suspicious. Wasn't this person a little too handsome? Fu Kangon was an experienced playboy, so it was difficult for a woman to disguise as a man to escape his eyes. He subconsciously looked at Zhu Xiaoxiao's earlobe and saw that it was as smooth as a mirror, and there was no trace of piercing. Only then did he dispel his doubts. Previously, there were a lot of so-called strange diseases that came to the mansion, but none of them were useful. In order not to waste time, I will test you first. If you really cure her disease, I will not only give you a reward of thousands of taels, but also personally apologize for offending you. Song Qingshu felt that Fu Kangon was indeed not just a playboy. His reputation for so many years was not in vain. He quickly coughed and asked, "May I ask, Marshal, is the patient in your residence a woman who is currently breastfeeding?" Fu Kangon was stunned and then nodded. "Yes. In addition to the fever, is there any part of the woman that is as hard as stone?" Song Qingshu continued to ask. Fu Kangon looked confused, and subconsciously replied, "I am not sure about this, but I heard her cry of pain before, it seems that this is what she meant." He quickly reacted and looked at Song Qingshu with joy. "Mr. is really a genius, doctor. Just from a few words on the notice outside, you can deduce the disease." Song Qingshu smiled faintly and said, "Marshal is overpraising me. This one only speculated from so many famous doctors' helplessness. They must have treated it with ordinary methods of treating fever. Naturally, the medicine is not effective." Yes, Mr.'s guess is correct." Fu Kangon stood up excitedly. "Mister, come with me, I will take you to see her." Song Qingshu looked back at Zhu Xiaoxiao, only to see her secretly giving him a thumbs up, and smiled proudly. "Greetings, Marshal." Bai Zhen respectfully bowed to Fu Kangon when they passed by the entrance of the inner chamber. Fu Kangon nodded and hurriedly walked inside. Song Qingshu and Zhu Xiaoxiao followed closely. Because Fu Kangon was personally leading the way, Bai Zhen naturally did not dare to ask. When they came to an elegant small courtyard, Fu Kangon pushed open the door. "Mister, please come in." He took the opportunity to wave his hand to ask the maid to leave first. Through the screen, Song Qingshu saw a woman lying on the bed. Her forehead was sweating, and her mouth was moaning in pain from time to time. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that the woman was Ma Chunhua, who he met in the broken temple on the way to Xingjing. Song Qingshu pretended to feel the pulse for a while, with an expression of wanting to say something but hesitated. Finally, he sighed deeply. "It can't be cured, we will leave first." Fu Kangon was stunned. Didn't Mister's guess just now was correct? Why can't it be cured now? Not to mention Fu Kangon, even Zhu Xiaoxiao was stunned when she heard his words. If it was a few days ago, your wife's illness could still be treated with medicine, but unfortunately, now, it's not something that can be cured by medicine. Song Qingshu shook his head. Fu Kangon was a shrewd man. He noticed the strangeness in his words and quickly said, "Medicine can't cure it, but there are other ways to cure it. Mister, please save her life." It was hard for Fu Kangon to say what kind of feelings he had for Ma Chunhua, but her youthful and beautiful body was really unforgettable, plus she had a strange disease. The only woman who gave birth to a son for Fu Kangon naturally had more weight in his heart than before. Chapter 230. What method is it? Fu Kangon was stunned. Song Qingshu hesitated for a long time, as if he had gone through a great struggle, he said. But it was not discharged in time, and finally settled and accumulated, blocking all the meridians in the chest. After a long time, it turned into inflammation, and finally caused your wife's illness. To treat it, we can only use a special massage technique to remove the blockage inside and clear the meridians in the chest. Only then can we save your wife's life. In fact, Ma Chunhua's illness was just a common breast blockage in breastfeeding women, which eventually developed into mastitis. If a woman got this illness, her chest would often swell and hurt, accompanied by a high fever. If not treated in time, it would develop into a very serious condition. As for why a man like Song Qingshu would know this, it was a coincidence. In his previous life, Song Qingshu's friend was the one who asked a woman to teach him how to swim. After marriage, his wife also contracted this illness. At that time, his friend was very worried. In the end, an experienced elder asked him to hire a breast surgeon to cure his wife. That was also the first time Song Qingshu understood that there was such a sacred and beautiful profession in this world. Every day, his job was to touch different women's breasts. After massaging them, the couple not only gave him a few thousand yuan as a reward, but they were also very grateful. Song Qingshu was very interested in this and specially looked for information to learn about it. He was prepared to make a guest appearance in his spare time to save the masses of suffering women. The first thing Song Qingshu did after learning was to find that friend, and said that he did not want any reward and would help his wife to open up her breast for free. The main reason was to combine theory with practice and personally try it out. In the end, his friend's wife blushed and kicked him out. Then, this great dream died in the womb. He did not expect that after coming to this world, he would have the opportunity to put it into practice. In fact, Song Qingshu now understood why so many famous doctors were helpless. It was not that they could not treat it, but they did not dare to. They did not even dare to touch her skin to feel her pulse, let alone massage her breast. They were worried that Fu Kangon would kill them afterwards, so they simply said that they did not know how to treat it. Fu Kangon looked at him fiercely. Seeing that his eyes were clear, he could only suppress the anger in his heart. "Can Mr. please teach the maids in the residence and let them massage my foreign?" Song Qingshu frowned and shook his head. Women are naturally weak, so it's difficult for them to have any effect. Furthermore, this technique is extremely complicated. If one doesn't understand medicine, I'm afraid it'll be difficult to learn it. If Marshall is unwilling to treat me, this old man will take his leave. Song Qingshu wasn't lying. Opening breast milk for a breastfeeding woman was a very strenuous task, and it often took several hours. Very few women had the physical strength and hand strength to do this, so in his previous life, the breast-opening workers were usually men. "Mister, please wait a moment. This Marshal has been pedantic. Mister's hands are miraculous and benevolent. Naturally, you won't have any dirty thoughts. Please save her, mister." Fu Kangon stretched out his hand and stopped Song Qingshu. He said respectfully, but in his heart, he was thinking, "I'll let you save Chunhua first, how can I let you live after this?" "All right then, Marshal, please order the servants to prepare a large pot of boiling hot water and a few clean towels." After saying that, Song Qingshu stretched out his hand in front of Zhu Yaoyao. "Zhou, help me roll up my sleeves." Zhu Yaoyao hated Song Qingshu for using his official position for personal gain, but in front of Fu Kangon, She could only obediently help him roll up his sleeves. Your disciple also wants to be here? Fu Kang's face darkened. Of course, I'll need Zhou Er's help with a lot of things later. Song Qingshu replied. All right. Fu Kangon forced a smile, but in his heart, he was thinking, if worst comes to worst, I'll just have to deal with one more person later. Soon, a maidservant brought the hot water. After Song Qingshu washed his hands, he came to the bed and looked at Ma Chunhua, who was lying on the bed in a semi-conscious state. Madam, it might be very painful later. You have to be mentally prepared. Ma Chunhua had heard the conversation between the two in a daze. Feeling shy, she turned her head to the side and replied in an inaudible voice, N. Fu Kang's eyelids twitched as he watched Song Qingshu remove Ma Chunhua's clothes one by one. When her snow-white breasts were revealed, Fu Kangon secretly snorted. He pulled a stool over and sat on the side. Out of sight, out of mind. Zhou Er, wring the towel dry and give it to me. Song Qingshu reached out and explored Ma Chunhua's breasts a few times. He said in a worried tone, It's already so serious. As a virgin, Zhu Yanxi felt embarrassed at the scene. She stole a glance at Song Qingshu, who was calm and composed, and really didn't know whether she should call him a vulgar or a gentleman. She rolled up her sleeves, revealing her two snow-white arms. Zhu Xiaoyan was startled. She looked up and found that Fu Kangon was not paying attention to her, so she quickly put down her sleeves, revealing only a small part of her skin, just enough to avoid getting wet. Song Qingshu took the towel and frowned. He put his hand into the basin to feel the temperature and shook his head. The water temperature is not enough. Change to a basin of boiling water. But won't this burn, madam? The maidservant asked. Don't worry, she won't feel hot at this time. The hotter the water, the more comfortable she will feel, Song Qingshu said. Soon, a basin of boiling water was brought up. Song Qingshu didn't want to burn Zhu Xiaoyi's jade-like fingers, so he asked the maidservant to wring the towel dry and give it to him. Looking at the maidservant who was grimacing in pain from the heat, Zhu Xiaoyan quickly understood Song Qingshu's thoughtfulness. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Song Qingshu put a few hot towels on Ma Chunhua's chest. Seeing that her expression suddenly relaxed, he quickly asked, Is madam comfortable? Ma Chunhua only felt that it sounded quite strange, but she could only answer honestly. Looking at Fu Kangon's expression, Song Qingshu hurriedly explained to him. This old man first used a hot towel to soften the hard lumps in madam's body. These lumps are actually the accumulation of milk in the body, and when it comes in contact with hot water, it will naturally melt. This is also why I need the hot towels. If the temperature is not enough, the heat will not reach madam's body, and naturally it won't be effective. Fu Kangon could only nod gloomily, indicating that he understood. Estimating that it was about time, Song Qingshu said to Ma Chunhua, Madam, let me remind you again, it will be very painful later. Although it is not as painful as when you gave birth, but it is not much different. Marshal, if you hear madam's cries of pain later, don't panic. Seeing that both of them nodded, Song Qingshu took off the towel, moved his fingers, and began to move. First, starting from the acupuncture point, Song Qingshu pinched a few hard lumps with his fingers. I will first disperse these hard lumps to clear the exit channel, then it will be easier to force more hard lumps out later. Song Qingshu explained as he moved. He didn't want Fu Kangon to not know the truth and kill him out of anger, which would ruin the later plan. Sure enough, not long after, Ma Chunhua's breathing became obviously heavy. At first, she gritted her teeth and endured, but later she couldn't bear it anymore and began to cry out in pain. Marshal, get the servants to prepare some olive oil. You guys probably don't have such things in this era, then prepare some sesame oil. Song Qingshu used a special method to constantly rub and squeeze the hard lumps around the Ruzhong acupuncture point, and white milk could be seen seeping out with the naked eye. After seeing this, Ma Chunhua was embarrassed and anxious, and could only cry out in pain to distract herself. When he felt that the small hard lumps around the Ruzhong acupuncture point had been rubbed, and the surface had become even softer, Song Qingshu soaked his hand in the sesame oil for a while, then picked it up and evenly applied it on Ma Chuanhua's chest. The hard lumps at the bottom of the nipple root are bigger and harder to remove. I'm afraid Madam will be in more pain. After saying that, starting from her armpit, he found a hard lump and squeezed it up bit by bit. Ma Chunhua only felt a sharp pain, and couldn't help but scream. Fu Kangon frowned and asked, "Is it really okay?" Song Qingshu replied, "Marshal, don't worry, this is normal. Women's mammary glands are small and numerous, and it's very easy for them to get clogged. I'm squeezing the hard lumps out from the mammary glands, so Madam will naturally feel pain. But after it's done, not only will it not be easy for her to contract this problem again, but the milk will also be more abundant, which is better for your son's body." Hearing him mention her children, Ma Chunhua raised her head and looked at Fu Kangon, her eyes filled with tears. "Kangon, our children," when his subordinates snatched Ma Chunhua back, she told him that she had 2 sons, and Fu Kangon, who had been childless for many years, was exceptionally happy. But when he found out that the 2 children had been shot by his subordinates with poisonous needles, he was afraid that they would not survive. In a rage, Fu Kangon executed the dozen or so subordinates who had carried out the operation at that time. Because Ma Chunhua was overly sad, and in addition to being drenched in the rain that day, she contracted this strange disease. Fu Kangon originally thought that he was destined to be childless, but who knew that not long ago, someone sent a pair of children's shoes, and said that the twins were in their hands, and asked the Bao Prince's residents to exchange the 42-chapter sutra. With one look, Ma Chunhua recognized that the shoes belonged to her son, and her heart, which was like dead ashes, was rekindled. If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to stay alive to look after her son, Ma Chunhua would probably rather die than let another man treat her with this kind of method. "Don't worry, I will definitely save them." Fu Kangon held Ma Chunhua's hand and said, "I believe you." Ma Chunhua nodded weakly, and the hand that was holding Fu Kangon's hand tightened. Fu Kangon was stunned, and he turned his head to look. It turned out that after Song Qingshu's grooming, Ma Chunhua's breast had opened up quite a bit, and a large lump was squeezed on top, and directly turned into a stream of milk that sprayed onto Zhu Yunai's face, who was helping at the side. Zhu Yunai was caught off guard, and only felt that her mouth was sweet and fishy, so she quickly stood up and wiped the thing off her face. "Marshal, the breast on Madam's side has opened up a small part, you should be able to see it with your naked eyes." Song Qingshu laughed inwardly. He increased the strength of his hand and shot streams of juice toward Zhu Xiaoyi's body. Fu Kangon didn't know whether he should be happy or angry. At this moment, a guard's voice came from outside the door. "Marshal, His Royal Highness asked me to inform you to prepare to set off. Those who are interested might as well consider this magical profession." Chapter 231. "All right, I'll be right there." Fu Kangon stood up and looked at Song Qingshu. "This marshal has some matters to attend to, so I'll leave her to Mr." Song Qingshu indicated that it was inconvenient for him to move his hands, so he didn't stand up to reply. "Marshal, feel free to do as you please. I still need a few more hours to clear Madam's meridians. I will inform my subordinates to prepare the payment for Mr." Before leaving, Fu Kangon secretly pulled a maid over and instructed, "Later on, all of you will stay here to prevent him from harming Madam. If anything happens, call the guards outside to help." Fu Kangon was also placed in a difficult position. If he were to leave these weak maids here, they wouldn't be able to help if anything were to happen. However, Ma Chunhua was currently bearing her breasts, and it was impossible for him to allow the guards to remain in the room. Thus, he could only make a compromise. Seeing the maid nod her head repeatedly, Fu Kangon opened the door and walked out. He instructed the guard by the door, Pay attention to the movements inside. If anyone calls for help, rush in immediately. Yes. The guard half-kneeled. Fu Kangon turned around to look at the room, and seeing that no one was paying attention to them, he hurriedly pulled the head guard by his feet and whispered, "When the physician comes out after treating Madame's illness, bring the master and disciple to a secluded place." He didn't finish his words clearly, instead making a throat-slitting gesture. The guard was alarmed, and he nodded his head in understanding. Hearing the footsteps of Fu Kangon leaving with his subordinates, Song Qingshu sent a telepathic message to Zhu Hongai and said, "That fellow really isn't a good person. We saved his wife, but he repaid our kindness with enmity and tried to silence us. Who asked you to touch his wife all over her body? If it were me, I would kill you as well." Zhu Hongai was still furious that the other party had intentionally squeezed milk onto his body. At the entrance of the Four Quarters Embassy, a young man staggered over. He stood there and examined the signboard on the door. After confirming that there was no mistake, he continued on his way. The young man had a handsome face, but at this moment there was a trace of blood at the corner of his lips. His face was pale, and it was clear that he was severely injured. "Halt! Who are you?" The guards at the door saw that he was acting suspiciously and quickly drew their swords. "I want to see your Lord Song. I have something important to report to him." The young man could not stand steadily and sat down. It seemed as if he had used up all the strength in his body to say those few words. The two guards looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know where he came from and hesitated. Seeing their appearance, the young man understood and revealed a bitter smile. He slightly calmed down the genuine qi in his body and said, "Look at me. I'm about to die. Is it really an assassin? Inform the Red Flower Association that Yu Yutong is requesting an audience. I'm sure he will agree to meet me." Red Flower Association? The two guards were shocked and quickly sent someone in to report. In Song Qingshu's bedroom, Li Yuanji was chatting with Luo Bing. "Sister Luo, do you think Brother Song can save the Red Flower Society's people?" She didn't know why, but she had a bad premonition in her heart. A premonition. Maybe. Luo Bing was obviously also a bit distracted. Lord Song, Lord Song?" At this time, the guards' voices came from outside the door. The two women were startled. In the end, Li Yuanji lowered her voice and said, "Didn't I say not to disturb me?" The guard outside the door clearly hesitated but finally said, "But there's a traitor of the Red Flower Society at the door who wants to see you. From the looks of it, I'm afraid he won't live for long." "What?" Luo Bing immediately stood up and asked hurriedly, "Did he say what his name was?" "I think he's called Yu Yutong," the guard said uncertainly. "Ah!" Li Yuanji screamed and ran out. "Where is he? Hurry, I'll go see him." The guard was stunned. He didn't expect that a young girl with bright eyes would suddenly appear in Song Qingshu's room. For a moment, he was confused and couldn't help but look behind her, wanting to hear Song Qingshu's instructions. At this time, Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixian heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw Li Yuanji rushing out, they hurriedly said, "My great-aunt, Lord Song specifically ordered that you can't go out." Thinking about what Song Qingshu had ordered them before he left, the two realized that they had misunderstood his sexual orientation. "I don't care. I want to see him." When Li Yuanji heard that Yu Yutong was about to die, she couldn't calm down. She immediately drew her sword and planned to rush out. "Lord Song has ordered that you are not allowed to take a step out of this courtyard." Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixian looked at each other and silently drew their swords. "Sister Yuanji, since we can't go out, let them bring Yu Yutong in." Luo Bing also walked out. She looked at Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixian and said, "Lord Song won't even allow this, right?" "Not really." Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixian sheathed their swords and turned around to order their subordinates, "Bring that person in." "Be gentle," Li Yuanji added nervously. When she saw Yu Yutong on the stretcher, Li Yuanji's tears rolled down her cheeks. She rushed over and asked, "Big brother Yu, what's wrong?" Zhang Kongyan nudged Zhao Qixian with his shoulder and whispered, "What's going on? Isn't she Lord Song's woman? Why is she hugging another man and crying?" "How would I know? Do you think Lord Song will skin us alive because of this when he comes back?" Zhao Qixian said gloomily. "He won't go that far." Zhang Kongyan's eyes turned and he covered his mouth with his hand. He whispered into Zhao Qixian's ear, "Have you forgotten the woman who came last time? She also has a husband. Our Lord Song probably likes this kind of woman. Now that the matter has been exposed, the culprit has come to our door." Seeing Yu Yutong on the verge of death, Luo Bing was already full of anger. When she heard their words getting more and more unbearable, she couldn't help but frown. "All of you, get out. This isn't a good idea, is it?" Zhang Kongyan smiled awkwardly. He had thought it through clearly. It was one thing to let this man in without knowing anything, but to let a man and a woman stay in the same room while knowing that they were having an affair? When Song Qinshu came back, he would definitely punish him. Zhao Qixian pulled his sleeve and whispered, "This man is going to die soon. What can he do? Look at these two tigresses. There's no need to offend them. They'll be taken in by Lord Song sooner or later. If they hate what happened today and try to make things difficult for us in the future, we won't be able to bear the consequences." "You're so thoughtful." Zhang Kongyan was still scared. The two hurriedly smiled and walked out, closing the door on their way out. "Big brother Yu, don't scare me. How did you get such a serious injury?" Li Yuanji cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Yu Yutong clearly didn't expect that Li Yuanji would also be here. He stammered, Miss Li?" Luo Bing was the calmer one. She took out a pill from the room and put it in Yu Yutong's mouth. "This is the snow ginseng jade toad pill that Korea offered as a tribute to the Tartars. I heard from Song Qinshu that it has a miraculous healing effect." "No need, I know that my body is dead." Yu Yutong smiled bitterly, but Luo Bing still forced the pill into his mouth. Yu Yutong didn't know if it was because of the power of the snow ginseng jade toad pill or because his lips had touched Luo Bing's finger, but his face flushed red and he coughed violently. "Fourth sister-in-law, you're really here. I, Yu Yutong, can die without regrets to be able to see you before I die." Yu Yutong stared at the gentle lines on Luo Bing's face in a daze. For a moment, he was a bit dazed. When Li Yuanji, who was at the side, heard his words, the blood drained from her face. She unconsciously took 2 steps back. The meaning in her eyes was difficult to understand. It was both blank and sad. Yu Yutong glanced at her. He knew that his actions were very hurtful to her, but he thought that he was going to die soon. He only wanted to talk with Luo Bing before he died. As for other people, he didn't care that much. Luo Bing knelt in front of him. Her eyes were slightly moist. She choked with sobs and said, 14th brother, 4th sister-in-law is here. Who was so cruel to injure you like this? Was it Yuzhen Zi or Zhang Zhaozhong? Sister-in-law will definitely take revenge for you. Yu Yutong shook his head and smiled faintly. It wasn't them. It was someone you couldn't even imagine. He then said a name. Luo Bing froze and unconsciously shook her head. How could it be him? Why would the old branch leader kill you? The medicinal power in his body gradually took effect. Yu Yutong felt much better. He quickly cheered himself up and told the whole story. When Yu Yutong heard that the old branch leader and the others had coerced Luo Bing to use a honey trap on Song Qinshu and that when Tai Lai had actually agreed to it, he was somewhat disheartened. At this time, when the masters from the Bao Prince's mansion rushed in, he was like a walking corpse and didn't put up any resistance. Originally, he was prepared to die under the enemy's blade. But who would have thought that the masters from the prince's mansion didn't kill them? After being captured in the prince's mansion, Yu Yutong and the others were sent to different places. After 2 days of depression, he suddenly realized that Luo Bing had escaped that day. She must be alone in Jianghu. An impulse welled up in his heart. He wanted to escape from the prince's mansion to find Luo Bing. When Yu Yutong started to move, he didn't know why the guards were abnormally lax. It was as if they didn't treat him as a criminal. He moved stealthily, originally planning to rescue the main branch leader and the old branch leader before doing anything else. As a result, he unwittingly arrived at a room and heard two people talking inside. One of them seemed to be the old branch leader's voice. Yu Yutong was puzzled and quietly listened. He didn't expect that he would discover such an enormous secret. On that day, Yu Yutong said that 40 years ago, his childhood sweetheart, Qian Zhenhuan, had been kidnapped by the Prince of Yong. She had been humiliated and had given birth to Hongli. Yu Yutong had taken a fancy to the fact that Hongli had ordinary Han blood flowing through his veins. As a result, he had decided to abandon his personal grudges and cooperate with Hongli with the Red Flower Society. He wanted to help Hongli become the emperor of the Manchurian Qing and bring a better life to the Han people of the world. Chapter 232. What? This news was subversive to Luo Bing. Li Yuanji stared at Luo Bing's back in a daze. She wondered if Luo Bing was really sent by the Red Flower Society to seduce Brother Song. No wonder she felt they were a bit strange these days. She just didn't know how close they were. I had the same reaction as you. Yu Yutong smiled bitterly. I thought the old leader sacrificed his feelings for the great cause of fighting against the Qing and restoring the Ming. I didn't expect that he had planned everything from the beginning. He wanted his son to be the emperor and tricked us brothers into working for him. He couldn't hide his resentment. What happened next? Luo Bing asked anxiously. Yu Yutong then recounted what had happened afterward. When he heard the news, he was completely dumbfounded. He subconsciously wanted to leave and inform the other members of the Red Flower Society. Who would have thought that in his days, he would knock over a flower vase and be discovered by Yu Wanting. When Yu Wanting found out it was Yu Yutong, he tried to lie to him. Unfortunately, Yu Yutong was still young and impetuous. He directly cursed Yu Wanting for being despicable and shameless. Yu Wanting finally killed him. Although Yu Yutong was taught by Ma Zhen, the head of the Tianqing Monastery, one of the 5 monastery heads of Wudong, he was still no match for Yu Wanting. He risked his life to escape. Unfortunately, his heart meridian had been broken by Yu Wanting. 14th brother, do you have any wishes? I will fulfill them for you. Luo Bing could also feel that Yu Yutong was dead and sobbed. Yu Yutong smiled bitterly. 4th sister-in-law, you know how I feel about you. Luo Bing was stunned. Li Yuanji's heart turned cold. 4th sister-in-law, I don't know if I should say something. Yu Yutong's face showed that he was struggling. 14th brother, 4th sister-in-law is listening. Luo Bing held his hands. She only felt cold and uncomfortable. 4th sister-in-law, don't follow 4th brother anymore. Follow Song Qingshu. Yu Yutong seemed to see through everything and said lightly. What? Luo Bing was stunned. She never expected that he would say this. Last time, the old branch leader sent you to seduce Song Qingshu. Although you lied to everyone, 4th brother still nodded in agreement, Yu Yutong said in a low voice. In my opinion, no matter what a man's goal is, he shouldn't let his woman be sacrificed. So after that day, I really looked down on 4th brother. He doesn't deserve to have you. Pa! Luo Bing gritted her teeth and gave him a slap. What are you doing? Li Yuanji came to her senses and hurriedly ran over to protect Yu Yutong as she glared at Luo Bing. Even if you hit me, I'd still say the same thing, Yu Yutong smiled bitterly. That day, 4th brother Wen said that Song Qingshu threatened him with our lives. He had no choice but to agree to give you to Song Qingshu. I really wanted to laugh. This only proved that in 4th brother's heart, there were other things more important than 4th sister-in-law. Should we rebel against the Qing and restore the Ming? Of course he should. But he used his woman to exchange for something. Do you really have a clear conscience? Yu Yutong sneered. If I were in fourth brother's position? In my position, I would rather die with all my brothers than agree to Song Qingshu's threats. That day's events had already left a rift between Wen Tailai and Luo Bing. Yu Yutong's words were like Panga's axe, making this rift bigger and bigger. Noticing Luo Bing's uncertain expression, Yu Yutong revealed a faint smile. Fourth sister-in-law, although I haven't had much contact with Song Qingshu, the few times I've met him left a deep impression on me. In order to obtain you, he used despicable means. Before, I hated him very much. But now that I'm about to die, I understand that no matter how despicable he is, he wouldn't use you to exchange for benefits. Only a man like him can protect you for the rest of your life. I can protect myself. I don't need a man to protect me, Luo Bing said through gritted teeth. She didn't want to listen to Yu Yutong anymore because she found that her heart was also wavering. Seeing Luo Bing's uncertain expression, Yu Yutong shook his head. He had always been infatuated with this fourth sister-in-law, but at the moment of his death, he felt that he could see it more clearly than anyone else. Looking back at Li Yuanji, who was weeping, he sighed in his heart and said softly, "Yuanji?" Li Yuanji nodded as if she was flattered. Usually, he would either call her Miss Li or Miss Li. How could he call her so intimately? But at the moment of his death, Li Yuanji's eyes were filled with tears. Do you think it's better to marry a man you love or to marry a man who loves you? At this moment, there was only endless tenderness in Yu Yutong's eyes. I'm the happiest to marry you, Li Yuanji said firmly. Yu Yutong was stunned. He didn't expect her answer to be this. Such a smart and beautiful girl had always been deeply in love with him. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved. But Yu Yutong thought that he was about to die. Why should he let a girl be full of worries? He could only harden his heart and say, "Miss Li, you should know that the person I love has always been fourth sister-in-law, not you." I don't care. Li Yuanji turned her head and wanted to wipe away the tears that were flowing out of her eyes. Unfortunately, she couldn't wipe them all. But I care. Yu Yutong's voice suddenly became serious. Even if I survive and marry you, I'm afraid that I'll be more grateful than emotional. At that time, as long as fourth sister-in-law waved her hand, I would leave you without hesitation and throw myself into her arms. 14th brother. What nonsense are you talking about? Luo Bing came back to her senses and glared at Yu Yutong. I'm not talking nonsense, Yu Yutong shook his head and said in a very calm voice. I don't think fourth brother one is worthy of fourth sister-in-law, and I also don't think I'm worthy of Miss Li. Miss Li, your love for me is too heavy. I can't repay you with equal value. Do you understand what I mean? But I don't need you to repay me. I'm just as happy to pay for it. Li Yuanji muttered to herself. I'm not worthy of your payment. Doing this only proves that you haven't met your destined person. The light in Yu Yutong's eyes gradually dimmed. I understand, big brother Yu. I will definitely find the destined person you speak of. Li Yuanji choked back her sobs and said. Yu Yutong relaxed and sighed. He suddenly thought of something and said, That's right, I heard from the old branch leader that the Bao Prince's mansion's surprise attack on the Red Flower Society's headquarters was only a play. They only wanted to use fourth sister-in-law to unknowingly complete their plan and lure Song Qingshu into their trap. Since Song Qingshu isn't here now, I'm afraid their plan has already succeeded. What? Li Yuanji and Luo Bing's expressions changed at the same time? Noticing the two women's concerned expressions, Yu Yutong's expression was complicated and difficult to understand. He quietly said, Why don't I have such good fortune as Song Qingshu? 14th brother, what did you say? Luo Bing was stunned. She knelt down again and looked at Yu Yutong. Yu Yutong had said everything he wanted to say. Once all his worldly wishes were fulfilled, The anger in his heart dissipated and his eyes quickly dimmed. Hearing Luo Bing's warm and familiar voice, he couldn't help but smile. "Fourth sister-in-law, can you kiss me?" Luo Bing was stunned. She had always been aware of Yu Yutong's feelings for her, but in her heart, she only saw him as a little brother who had made a mistake. Hearing his dying wish, her heart was conflicted. After a moment of silence, she finally slowly moved her head closer. Yu Yutong smiled contentedly as he watched the red lips that he had been yearning for day and night approach him. His hands on the stretcher went limp, and he slid down into the air. His eyes closed for the rest of his life. 14th brother. Big brother Yu. The two women immediately wailed, and cried bitterly on Yu Yutong's body. Not long after, Li Yuanji raised her head and wiped away her tears. She grabbed the sword beside her and walked out. Luo Bing noticed her abnormality and hurriedly stood up and shouted, "Younger sister Yuanji, what are you doing? I'm going to kill that bastard Yu Wanting and avenge big brother Yu," Li Yuanji said through clenched teeth. As the beloved daughter of Li Keqiu, a high-ranking military official of the imperial court, the reason why she treated the members of the Red Flower Society so amiably was because she loved the house and its crow. Now that Yu Yutong had died at the hands of the Red Flower Society, she even had the impulse to eradicate the Red Flower Society. At this moment, Luo Bing was very conflicted. After all, Yu Wanting had been in charge of the Red Flower Society for many years. She had always respected and feared Wan Ting. Although she knew from Yu Yutong that Yu Wanting's dignified image was only a disguise for his own benefit, the deep-rooted image of Yu Wanting in her heart was not so easy to change so quickly. Hearing Li Yuanji's words, Luo Bing subconsciously wanted to stop her, but she quickly realized that she was completely unreasonable. In a trance, she directly said, "Our first priority is to save Song Qinshu. In order to save our man, he risked his life. I'm afraid now." Li Yuanji finally came back to her senses and muttered to herself, "That's right. Since all of this is a conspiracy, if Big Brother Song loses his life for my request, I'm afraid I won't be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life." Luo Bing also pulled out her mandarin duck knives from the foot of the bed and said through gritted teeth, "Sister Yuanji, let's save Song Qinshu first. We'll talk about revenge later." Li Yuanji's expression was uncertain. In the end, she nodded and said, "Okay." When Zhang Kongyan and Li Yuanji saw the two women walk out with a murderous look, they were immediately dumbfounded. "Two great ladies, what are you going to do?" After such an interruption, Li Yuanji finally no longer had that dazed look in her eyes. Her usual shrewdness recovered a bit. Looking at the two imperial bodyguards, she had an idea and hurriedly said, "We're going to save your Lord Song." Then she quickly told the two about the Red Flower Society's scheme and her speculation that Song Qinshu was in deep danger at this time. Zhang Kongyan and Zhao Qixuan looked at each other and realized the seriousness of the situation. They nodded and looked at the two women and said, "Two ladies, Lord Song has already ordered that if he is in danger, we shouldn't go to save him directly. Instead, we should go to find someone else." In the Wanhao Inn, the people of the Divine Dragon cult were busy. Su Quan closed her eyes and considered the details of the operation. She felt that there was no problem. When she opened her eyes and was about to speak, her expression suddenly changed. Bang! Kung Fu masters broke through the windows on all sides, the walls next door, and even the roof. In just a moment, the Divine Dragon cult's ordinary followers suffered heavy casualties. The rest of the core members surrounded Su Quan to protect her. Su Quan subconsciously grabbed the twins next to her in her hands. Her red and sharp nails were aimed at the babies' throats. She vigilantly looked at the people who came in. "I've long heard that the Divine Dragon Island's cult madam is exceptionally beautiful. Seeing you today, you really live up to your reputation." Fu Kangon let out a long laugh and walked out of the crowd. Looking at Yuzhen Zhang Zhaozhong, Hai Lanbai de Bu, and other famous experts of the prince's mansion, Su Quan's face turned livid. Why are you here? Don't you want to ask? Shouldn't we be at the dock 10 li away? Fu Kangon sneered. In the past, I faced many talented and intelligent people on the battlefield, but I was still able to cut through them like a hot knife through butter. A mere divine dragon island is not worth mentioning. Madam, we'll cover you. Run. Fat Duda roared angrily. He waved the crescent spade and directly pounced at Fu Kangon. You're courting death. Zhang Zhaozhong's eyes focused. He unsheathed his congealed blue sword. A cold light flashed in the room, and he blocked Fat Duda's attack. At the same time, Lu Gaoxian, who was attacking, was also blocked by De Bu and Hai Lanbai. Both of their martial arts were stronger than Lu Gaoxuan's. Soon, Lu Gaoxian was surrounded by danger. Lord Zhang, this humble Taoist will lend you a hand. Yuzhen Zi laughed sinisterly and suddenly disappeared. He unsheathed his sword and used the lightning changes to attack Fat Duda's back. Chapter 233. Hearing Fat Tuchuo's scream, Lu Gaoxian panicked and his moves became even more chaotic. He was hit in the face by Hai Lanbai and his brain burst open. Shitty. Thin Tuchuo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets and was about to rush forward when Su Quan stretched out her hand and stopped him. Looking at Fu Kangon, she smiled tenderly and said, Marshal Fu, if you don't let your subordinates stop, I'm afraid your son's life won't be guaranteed. Finishing, she exerted force in her hand and the two babies immediately started wailing. Stop! Fu Kangon raised his left hand and the masters of the Wangfu quietened down, but they still surrounded the Shun Long Jiao people. Su Quan's temples were covered in sweat and she knew that today was a bad day. But she was puzzled that the Wangfu had found her whereabouts. Could it be that Song Qinshu betrayed them? Madam Hong, you are already heavily surrounded, can you still escape? Why not surrender earlier? Ben Shuai will take into account your ability, and can use the Wangfu's honor to invite Madam. Fu Kangon looked at the two pink and jade-like children in her hands and his heart warmed. He thought that no matter what, he would save his sons today. Under normal circumstances, Chia wouldn't be able to escape, but now that your son is in my hands, I would like to try. Su Quan smiled tenderly and said, with so many men surrounding Chia is timid. If I am not careful and injure one of the sons, I hope Marshal Fu won't take offense. After all, there is still one son left. Everyone in the Wangfu felt a chill in their hearts. They didn't expect that this incomparably charming woman, when saying such a vicious threat, would still have a sweet smile on her face. Good, you give them to me. Ben Shuai will keep his promise and let you live. Fu Kangon said in a deep voice. Io, a man's promise is the most unreliable thing in the world. Su Quan's eyes turned and she shook her head. It's better to have them in your hands. Once we safely board the ship, we will naturally return the two sons to Marshal Fu. Good, if you dare to harm a single hair on their head, Ben Shuai will definitely chase your Shun Long Jiao to the ends of the earth. Fu Kangon snorted coldly and waved his hand. The Wangfu's encirclement revealed a gap. Thin Tuchuo, lead the way. Su Quan ordered without turning her head. Yes, madam. Thin Tuchuo nodded. He took the lead and walked at the front, guarding against the others' sneak attack. Step by step, Su Quan retreated with him. The corner of her mouth revealed a trace of a smile. She thought that when they left Xingjing Sec's sphere of influence, she would use these two kids to exchange for the 42-chapter sutra. Just as she was calculating Fu Kangon's bottom line in her mind, she suddenly felt a sharp pain coming from her back. Su Quan spat out a mouthful of blood. Before she could react, several major acupoints on her body had already been completely sealed. She knew there was only one person behind her. She could not help but turn her head around to glare angrily at Thin Tuchuo. Turns out everything was your doing. Now Su Quan finally understood. Based on Shen Longjiao's ability, the Wangfu would not be able to track their whereabouts in a short time. Originally she had already planned how to confuse the Wangfu's attention, how to exchange the sutra, just like in Chapter 232, a common man's anger splashes 3 feet of blood. She perfectly retreated, but the result was that before the operation could even begin, the Wangfu directly executed a beheading operation. In fact, she should have long thought that there was a traitor in the cult. However, she still didn't understand. Thin Tuchuo was obviously poisoned by the leopard embryo tendon altering pill, so how could he dare to betray Shenlong Jiao? Madam, all these years, you have been eradicating the elders in the cult and promoting the young followers without restraint. Although everyone is cursing Madam, I understand that all of this is actually Jiaozhu's intention. If I follow Shenlong Jiao, sooner or later I will be harmed by Jiaozhu, so why should I just sit and wait for death? He slowly walked toward Fu Kangon. Thin Venerable has made a great contribution today. This marshal will certainly report back to Lord Father. In the future, the position of Shen Long Jiao's Jiaozhu will certainly belong to Venerable. Fu Kangon was overjoyed. Seeing Thin Tuchuo approaching, True Jade subconsciously stood in front of him. Fu Kangon coughed and waved his hand. No harm, let him come. It wasn't that Fu Kangon didn't doubt Thin Tuchuo's intentions, but after this battle, Shenlong Jiao had lost at least a third of its higher-ups, and the Jiaozhu's wife had also fallen into his hands, so he no longer had any doubts. He had always understood the principle of not doubting the people you use, and not using the people you doubt. In order to completely subdue Thin Tuchuo, he naturally had to show that he trusted him. Wang Ye, I've saved your son. Thin Tuchuo smiled and unhurriedly sent the twins forward. Looking at his 2 sons who were still in swaddling clothes, a trace of tenderness appeared on Fu Kangon's face. He stretched out his hand, wanting to receive them, but who would have thought that at this time, a sudden change would occur. Fat Tuchuo's smile disappeared and was replaced by a heart full of hatred. He threw the 2 babies to the side, just in time to block True Jade and Zhang Zhaozhong's line of sight. Then, he used all his strength to punch Fu Kangon's chest. Fu Kangon looked down at the fist on his chest in disbelief. His mouth gurgled a few times, wanting to open his mouth to speak, but he could only spit out a few mouthfuls of sticky blood. He didn't expect that he, the commander of hundreds of thousands of troops and countless experts under his command, would unexpectedly die in the hands of such a small character. Thinking of this, he was so angry that he spat out another mouthful of blood. His legs went soft, and he knelt down like a pile of mud. Daughter, father has avenged you, ha 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 ha. Even at this time, Thin Tuchuo didn't shout out Janning's identity. In his opinion, Janning could be buried with the status of a princess, and as her father, he was already very happy. There was no need to let the world know that she was actually not a golden branch or jade leaf, but a bastard child. At this time, True Jade and Zhang Zhaozhong both arrived. Thin Tuchuo's body was pierced by a long sword, but he wasn't surprised. Instead, he revealed a smile as if his wish had been fulfilled. He had already made plans to perish together with Fu Kangon. He didn't even care about his own life, so why would he care about the lives of the Divine Dragon Cult's people? He used the Divine Dragon Cult's people as bait, and finally won Fu Kangon's trust. Only then did he succeed in carrying out this attack. Junior Marshal Brother, Senior Marshal Brother, has let you down the most. This was the last thought that flashed through Thin Tuchuo's mind before he collapsed. Looking at Fu Kangon, who died with remaining grievances, all the experts of the Wangfu felt as if they had fallen into an icehouse. Chapter 232. Blood splashes 3 feet of an angry ordinary man. One by one, they pulled out their sabers and chopped Thin Tuchuo into meat paste, but they still couldn't vent their hatred. In the end, they all turned their heads to look at Su Quan. Su Quan also didn't expect this unforeseen event to suddenly occur. Before she could figure out who Thin Tuchuo's daughter was, she discovered that everyone in the Wangfu was fiercely looking at her. For a moment she felt her blood run cold. What do you want to do? Kill her, take revenge for the marshal. It was unknown who shouted this, but everyone in the Wangfu surrounded her. Although True Jade, Zhang Zhaozhong and a few others understood that Su Quan's status as the Divine Dragon Island's Madam Sect leader's wife, their benefits would be even greater after she was captured. However, this situation couldn't stop everyone. Just as they were feeling anxious, a black-clothed man suddenly rushed in, and no one was his match. True Jade Child and Zhang Zhaozhong rushed forward to meet him, but they were also forced back by a single move. Everyone turned pale with fright and could only watch helplessly as the black-clothed man carried Su Quan and disappeared into the distance. Meanwhile, Ma Chunhua of Bao Prince's Fu, under Song Qingshu's special kneading method, felt her chest become soft and limp. It was no longer in that rock-hard state from before. "Thank you very much, teacher." Feeling that the other party's hand was still on her chest, Ma Chunhua felt uncomfortable all over when she said these words. Song Qingshu faintly smiled and withdrew his hand. After washing it in the basin, he took the towel handed over by a maid and wiped it. "Originally, it would still take a few more hours, but I have already opened up most of the breast. I see that Madam is also quite uncomfortable, so let the maid continue massaging according to the method I just used." Seeing that Fu Kangon had already left, Song Qingshu was naturally in a hurry to see Xia Qingqing. Naturally, he wasn't in the mood to continue massaging her. "Ah!" Ma Chunhua was startled and nodded. She turned her head and ordered the maid beside her. "Xiaotao, take teacher out and properly entertain him." "Yes." The one called Xiaotao nodded. "Teacher, please follow me." Song Qingshu gave Zhu Xiaotao a look, then picked up the medicine box and followed behind the maid. "Sister Xiaotao, has he already cured Madam's illness?" As soon as the door opened, the guard at the door saw them and thought, how could they be so fast? "Yes, almost. Madam told me to properly entertain him," Xiaotao replied. The guard's eyes turned and quickly said, "Just now, Marshal has already ordered us to bring him to the wing room and properly entertain him. Sister Xiaotao, you should return to the room and take care of Madam. Madam is sick and needs more people." Xiaotao thought about it and agreed. "All right then, I will leave him to you. Don't neglect him." "We know." The guards looked at each other and could clearly see the strange smiles on each other's faces. Song Qingshu looked on coldly from the side and did not say anything. He quietly followed behind the guards. The group chose secluded and uninhabited paths. When they came to a garden, the guards stopped. "Where is this?" Song Qingshu asked, even though he already knew the answer. Chapter 232. A man's anger splashes 3 feet of blood. Hee. This is the place where you will die. Before he finished speaking, the guards had already pulled out their swords and slashed at them. Song Qingshu disappeared from his original spot. Slap, slap, slap. He sealed several people's acupoints. He was about to say something when he saw Zhu Meng pull his sword from the bottom of the Special Treatment of Difficult and Complicated Diseases banner. With a flash of cold light, several imperial bodyguards died. "I have them under control." Song Qingshu frowned. In his heart, he really didn't want to kill more people. "Tartar dogs, one more is one," Zhu Xiaotao said with a cold face. Thinking of her fallen country and her brothers and sisters who died in the hands of the Manchurian Qing, Song Qingshu felt that he was in no position to blame them. He sighed and said, "Let's go and find Xia Qingqing." On the way, they kidnapped a maid and asked where the new Fujin lived. Then, Song Qingshu sealed her acupoints and hid her in the rockery. This time, Zhu Xiaotao didn't kill them. Following the maid's directions, they covered their tracks and finally found the small courtyard where Xia Qingqing lived. Fortunately, the inner courtyard is not as heavily guarded as the outer courtyard. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would have been discovered in broad daylight, Zhu Xiaotao said happily. As long as they can live, even if they are cuckolded. Oh no, Hongli and his son have a lot of wives and concubines. There must be fertile fields that lack irrigation. Naturally, they don't dare to let other men in. If some daring guard helps them irrigate, hee. Song Qingshu's face was full of ridicule. What nonsense are you talking about? Zhu Xiaotao blushed and spat. Let's find Qingqing. The two were worried that they would alarm the servants, so they didn't dare to open the door directly. Instead, they used their lightness skills to lie on the wall of the courtyard and observe the situation inside. A graceful figure was sitting on a stone bench in the middle of the courtyard. Her hair was combed into a beautiful bun, which was tall and fell to the side. It matched her slender and graceful figure, slender waist, beautiful jade neck, and snow-white skin. Under the reflection of the light, she looked even more charming and dazzling. Chapter 234. Who are you? Xia Qingqing turned around and saw a sage-like old man looking at her affectionately. Instinctively, she grabbed the golden snake sword on the table and looked at him warily. In this world, who else would call you that other than me? Song Qingshu pulled off his mask and returned to his original appearance and voice. It's you. Seeing his appearance, Xia Qingqing stilled and quickly said in a low voice, What are you doing here? Didn't you say you'll regret it forever? Song Qingshu did not care. Instead, he smiled slightly and said, Since we'll never meet again, why would someone still worry about something happening to me and send me dates and peaches to escape early? Xia Qingqing's face reddened. She braced herself and said, You think too much. I only put poison in them to poison you to death. Ah, if I ate them, I'm afraid I'd be poisoned to death by you. Song Qingshu sighed. Xia Qingqing looked at him in confusion. There's no poison. Song Qingshu did not answer directly. Instead, he asked, Back then, since you sent me dates and peaches, why didn't you just tell me to escape quickly? If I was stupid and didn't react in time, wouldn't I have wasted your kindness? I was in the imperial mansion, and my every move was monitored. It was very inconvenient, so I could only use this method. Also, Xia Qingqing pursed her lips and smiled. You're as sly as a ghost. There's no way you couldn't even see this. All right, I'll take that as a compliment. Song Qingshu said gloomily. Of course I could guess the meaning, but Hong Li is not an idiot. He must have guessed it too. He pretended not to know what you did, but secretly poisoned the dates and peaches. He wanted to use you to kill me. Did you know? What? Xia Qingqing was shocked and angry. Although Song Qingshu was standing in front of her safe and sound, she was still afraid. At that time, when I realized that it was a gift from you, I naturally thought that there was no problem. Fortunately, someone else reminded me. Song Qingshu recalled Luo Bing's words back then. Even though I don't understand why you trust the gift-giver so much, these 2 baskets of fruits must have passed through many hands along the way to the Four Quarters Embassy. It's best for you to be careful. Only then did he wake up. Then, he found someone to bring a horse over and fed it the dates. Not long after, the horse died from the poison. Why do you believe that I wasn't the one who poisoned you? Xia Qingqing looked at him with a burning gaze. Song Qingshu raised his head and looked at her. Although you left me cruelly, I don't think you would hurt me. Xia Qingqing's heart softened. Just as she was about to tell him the truth, a light cough came from the side. She turned around and saw Zhu Xiaowei looking at them with a faint smile. Although I don't want to disturb you, we're in danger now. Shouldn't we leave the king's mansion first? Ah Jiu, long time no see. Seeing Zhu Xiaowei, the scene of the two of them fighting for a man's favor in the past appeared in her mind once more. Xia Qingqing sighed. Long time no see. Long time no see. Zhu Xiaowei also fell silent. Song Qingshu looked at the 2 beauties with graceful figures standing in front of him, their faces reflecting off each other. One was bright and beautiful while the other was elegant and elegant. Unfortunately, they were both thinking of the same man. He felt uncomfortable in his heart and quickly said, "Don't stay silent. Hurry up and go." Xia Qingqing had already wavered, but seeing Zhu Xiaowei again made her recall the bits and pieces of her time with Yuan Qingji. Her conviction for vengeance became even firmer. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, she shook her head. "I won't leave. Qingqing, I know you want to avenge Big Brother Yuan, but we can think of a way together. Do you really have to choose this method of mutual destruction? Big Brother Yuan's spirit in heaven definitely doesn't want you to do this." Zhu Xiaowei gently persuaded. "I know this, you don't need to persuade me anymore." Xia Qingqing paused. "As for vengeance, you are you, and I am me. I can avenge Big Brother Yuan alone." A few years ago, Xia Qingqing had eaten a lot of jealousy from Zhu Xiaowei. Although time had passed and Xia Qingqing was no longer the unruly and willful girl from back then, she still held a grudge in her heart. In her opinion, she was Big Brother Yuan's wife. It was only right and proper for her to avenge him. If she had to borrow Zhu Xiaowei's power, Xia Qingqing would be extremely unwilling. "What kind of place do you think Prince Bao's mansion is? That you can come and go as you please?" After a cold snort, a large group of soldiers swarmed in from the door. The person in the middle was Prince Bao Hongli. It turned out that the servant girl that Song Qinshu and the others had hidden in the rockery had been discovered. When Hongli heard the news, he dared to come with his men. "So it's Prince. This lowly official is here to pay a visit. I unintentionally trespassed here. Please forgive me." Song Qinshu cupped his hands in front of his chest. He thought to himself, "It seems like I have to shed all pretense of cordiality. Lord Song, what a nice visit. You actually came to visit this prince's Fujin residence." Hongli sneered coldly. Song Qinshu felt that he was speechless. At least on the surface, he was indeed in the wrong. He clearly knew that it was useless to say anything else. He looked back at Zhu Xiaowei and said, "To catch the bandits, first catch the ringleader." After saying that, he disappeared and rushed toward Hongli. Zhu Xiaowei immediately understood and used the lightning changes to cooperate with Hongli's attack. Song Qingshu thought that most of the experts in Prince Bao's mansion had been transferred to the Divine Dragon cult, so there should not be any experts around Hongli. Unexpectedly, when he was in front of Hongli, two yellow-clothed monks suddenly jumped out from both sides. In the blink of an eye, both of them exchanged more than 10 moves, but they were evenly matched. In the end, both of them joined forces and pushed Song Qinshu back with a palm strike. On the other side, Zhu Xiaowei was also forced to take a few steps back by a sharp force. Song Qinshu pulled Zhu Xiaowei, who was about to continue rushing forward. When he saw that it was a monk with yellow eyebrows who released the force, he thought, "Are you the yellow-browed monk who specializes in the Vajra finger? Excellent, excellent." Chapter 233. Li Sword Artie didn't expect you to recognize me. The yellow-browed monk nodded in approval. The yellow-browed monk was a character in the demigods and semidevils. When he was young, he was famous in Jianghu for his Vajra finger. In the book, in order to save Duan Yu, he competed with Duan Yanqing, the head of the 4 evildoers in the Tribulation Valley. Surprisingly, he did not lose. Song Qingshu's face darkened. He turned to look at the 2 monks who had just fought with him. Their kung fu was even better than that of the yellow-browed monk. He asked in confusion, "Masters, which temple are you from?" The 2 monks chanted the name of Buddha. "We are Tian Hong, Tianjing, from Putian Shaolin Temple. Nice to meet you, almsgiver Song." Tian Hong? Tianjing? Song Qingshu did not know who they were. It was not until he saw the people of the Red Flower Society coming in that he finally remembered who they were. In the later period of the Book and Sword Enmity, Chen Jialuo, who had achieved great success in Kung Fu, visited the southern Shaolin Temple. He received a palm strike from Tianjing and suffered internal injuries. In the end, he was defeated after 40 moves. Tian Hong was Tian Jing's senior brother. It was said that his kung fu was even better than Tian Jing's. Why would the southern Shaolin Temple collude with the Qing Emperor? Could it be that the masters are also blinded by worldly fame and fortune? I really don't know what kind of Buddha you are chanting, Song Qinshu sneered. Amitabha. In order to save the people of the world, the incomprehension and slander of the world are but fleeting clouds. Tian Hong replied calmly. Yu Wanting was a layman disciple of the southern Shaolin Temple. They could be considered brothers. He also knew a thing or two about what happened 40 years ago. In his opinion, Yu Wanting's plan had a high chance of success. In order to restore the Han dynasty, he was willing to help Yu Wanting. After the Battle of the Forbidden City, Yu Wanting had been afraid of Song Qingshu's kung fu. When he learned that Song Qingshu was going to be appointed as an imperial envoy to Xinjing City, he sent a pigeon to the southern Shaolin Temple. When Tian Hong received the news, he brought his junior brother Tian Jing and the master monk of the Dharma Hall, Huang Mei, and rushed to help. Fourth brother one, it's really good. Luo Bing begged me to save you, but I didn't expect you to be in cahoots with the enemy. Song Qinshu sneered, but he was surprised and doubtful. Could it be that Luo Bing had other plans? What did you do to Luo Bing? When Tai Lai said angrily. Luo Bing ate well at my place and slept soundly. It seemed that Luo Bing didn't know about it. After understanding all this, Song Qinshu deliberately said ambiguously, I'll kill you. When Tai Lai was furious. When he was about to fly over, Yu Wanting stretched out his hand and stopped him. Yu Wanting's face was full of black lines. The original plan was to pretend that the Red Flower Society was imprisoned by Hong Li and let Luo Bing, who didn't know anything, persuade Song Qinshu to save the Red Flower Society. When Song Qinshu saved them, he must have thought that they would be deeply grateful. Naturally, he wouldn't be on guard. At this time, Yu Wanting secretly invited the master of the southern Shaolin Temple and took the opportunity to attack him. It was very likely that he could kill him with one strike. Unfortunately, he did not expect that Yu Yutong would hear his secret. Although he had broken his heart meridian, he still managed to escape. He was worried that the news had already been leaked. Only sort of but before they could come to a conclusion, they heard that Song Qinshu had sneaked into the prince's mansion. They had no choice but to rush over. Chen Jialua stepped forward and scolded angrily, Song Qinshu, last time in the palace, you caused our Red Flower Society to suffer heavy losses. After that, you used despicable means to threaten fourth brother one. Today, I'll drink you to settle this score. Song Qinshu looked at him coldly. I've always looked down on your Red Flower Society from the bottom of my heart. From the leader to the subordinates, all of you rely on selling women to gain political benefit. Song Qinshu's original intention was to say that in the original work, Chen Jialua had given his lover, Princess Xiangxiang, to Qianlong, but in this world, because Hongli was no longer the emperor, and the Qing kingdom was not a dynasty that unified the world automatically corrected the plot. Princess Xiangxiang and Chen Jialua no longer had any contact. Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Chen Jialua didn't feel anything. Instead, Yu Wanting and Wen Tailai felt that his words were like a loud slap to their faces. Instantly, they couldn't restrain their anger and directly rushed over. Seeing the two of them move, the Red Flower Society members hurriedly followed. Tianjing Tianhong and Yellow-Browed Monk chanted the name of Buddha and also attacked. Chapter 235. 234 inches his previous life, Song Qinshu was used to the computer special effects in movies and TV shows. Naturally, he was not satisfied with holding a sword in his hand and using some rigid swordsmanship. Instead, he wanted to make the sword fly like in various Xianxia TV shows. He did not say that he could behead someone from 1,000 miles away like Mr. Emptiness in Journey to the West, but he wanted to control his sword in the air like Yi Tianxing in Yangzhang Sanfeng. Although he could not control 8 swords at the same time like Yi Tianxing, it was not a problem to control one sword. However, there was a limit to the distance of control. Now, he could only control the sword within a distance of 5 feet from his body. If it was any further, the swordsmanship would be messy and not threatening at all. At this distance, he could perfectly control the wooden sword with his real chi and use exquisite swordsmanship. At the same time, he could also use the 18 dragons subduing palms with both hands. In fact, it was somewhat similar to Zhou Buodong's 2 hands mutual fighting. He could also multitask. When the enemy fought with him, it was as if they were facing 2 Song Qingshu. One used the 18 dragons subduing palms to fight the enemy head-on, while the other moved around and waited for an opportunity to attack with the exquisite 5 mountain divine sword. Moreover, the one controlling the wooden sword was not a real person. Therefore, the wooden sword could attack from all kinds of unimaginable angles, making it impossible to guard against. When the people of the Red Flower Society rushed over, the weaker ones were directly forced out by the sword energy and palm wind. They could not even enter the battle circle. In the end, those who could fight with Song Qingshu were only Tian Hong, Tian Jing, Huang Mei Monk, Yuaning, Chen Jialuo, Taoist Wu Chen, and Wen Tai Lai. The more they fought, the more frightened they became. It was obvious that several experts were besieging one person, but when they fought, it was as if dozens of Song Qingshu were besieging them. The opponent's palms were fine. Although the palm technique was exquisite and fierce, it was after all traceable. With 7 against 1, when one of them was in danger, the others would attack Song Qingshu and force him to withdraw his palms to defend. However, the wooden sword was too elusive. It was difficult to predict from which angle it would drill out next time. Not long after, their bodies were riddled with wounds, most of which were caused by the wooden sword. The more Wen Tai Lai fought, the more aggrieved he became. The hatred he had for Song Qingshu made him disregard everything and use his body as bait, wanting to use his flesh and blood to clamp that wooden sword. However, when Song Qingshu designed this move, he had already calculated his enemy's reaction. Seeing that Wen Tai Lai wanted to take it head-on, Song Qingshu smiled coldly and directly controlled the wooden sword to shoot over. A trace of blood blossomed from his waist and abdomen. Wen Tai Lai roared and put his palms together, wanting to seize the opportunity to grab the wooden sword. Who would have thought that the rushing thunder hand that could split stone would touch the sword's body? Immediately, a burst of sharp pain was transmitted. He did not think that the sword would be covered with a layer of swift and fierce sword chi. His palms immediately became badly mutilated. While Song Qingshu was distracted, the yellow-browed monk used his Vajra finger to poke at Song Qingshu's chest. In his expectation, this move of his was right when Song Qingshu's old strength had been exhausted and new strength had not been generated. The only thing that Song Qingshu could do was to try his best to reduce the degree of injury. Who would have thought that Song Qingshu would suddenly disappear in front of his eyes? The yellow-browed monk could not help but stare blankly when his confident strike hit empty air. "Watch your step!" A cry of alarm came from the side, but it was too late. Song Qingshu used the snake form flipping cat movement technique to roll over on the ground and took the opportunity to circulate his true chi to summon the wooden sword to attack the yellow-browed monk. The hamstring was removed. The yellow-browed monk was, after all, an expert who had been famous for a long time. In the face of danger, he hurriedly dodged to the side. Even though he avoided the misfortune of having his hamstring crippled, a few of his toes were still cut off by the swift and fierce sword chi. Song Qingshu took the opportunity to crash into his chest and punched him in the chest. Seeing the yellow-browed monk spit out blood and retreat, Song Qingshu secretly sighed in pity. If it were not for the fact that he had to deal with the few people who had rushed over after hearing the news and did not dare to use too much strength, This attack would have been enough to take the yellow-browed monk's life. Even though Song Qinshu tried his best to avoid staining his hands with blood, it was more out of pity for the weak. Towards those who were destined to become his enemies, Song Qinshu was not as pedantic as Song Xianggong. Even so, the yellow-browed monk had already lost the ability to fight. Song Qinshu immediately felt the pressure on him decrease greatly. "Brother Zhao San, why don't you go and help? We can't even get involved if we want to." Wu Zhuge and Su Tianhong anxiously watched the battle in the field, while tugging on Zhao Banshan's sleeve, and asked, "It is already disgraceful enough that our Red Flower Society has the advantage in numbers. If we use hidden weapons to injure others at this time, it will not affect our reputation." Looking at the miraculous young man in the field, Zhao Banshan sighed. Previously, when Song Qinshu had saved him in the imperial palace, he already had a good impression of Song Qinshu. Moreover, Song Qinshu had said that he had saved him because of a friend. Even though Wen Tai later said that Song Qinshu had done it to deceive Luobing, Zhao Banshan still believed in Song Qinshu. He felt that even if Wen Tai did not agree to the other party's conditions, Song Qinshu would still save him. Looking at Su Tianhong, who was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, Zhao Banshan said, "Right now they are fighting in a chaotic mess. If I use hidden weapons, it will be easier for me to injure my own people. Let's wait and see first. We must believe in the strength of Chief Leader and the others." Today, to be able to see such a marvelous sword technique, this poor Taoist is really fortunate. Taoist priest Wu Chen was famous in Jianghu for his 72 soul-chasing sword technique. For a long time, he had been the #1 expert of the Red Flower Society. His sword technique was as fast as lightning, and his moves were incomparably ruthless. He regarded the sword as his life, so he could naturally see that Song Qinshu had created a completely new sword technique. He was filled with admiration and jealousy. Activating his unique skill, he attacked Song Qinshu with all his might. Song Qinshu's eyes narrowed. Although Taoist priest Wu Chen was coming at him aggressively, he had many flaws. The soul-chasing sword technique only attacked and did not defend. It sacrificed one's own defense to maximize the power of the attack. If one was facing someone whose martial arts were lower than one's, one would naturally have an overwhelming advantage. Even if one was facing someone who was at the same level as one would be able to use moves that were faster than one's sword to catch the opponent off guard and gain the upper hand. However, ever since Song Qinshu had mastered the essence of the Five Mountain Sword faction and fought with the world's top experts several times, his understanding of the origin of the sword technique was probably among the best in the world. If Taoist priest Wu Chen fought steadily, Song Qinshu would not be able to deal with him in a short time because he had his teammates to protect him. However, he was greedy and rash. He attacked with the fiercest sword technique, which was full of flaws in Song Qinshu's eyes. Under Taoist priest Wu Chen's stunned gaze, Song Qinshu put 2 fingers together and caught the tip of his sword. Then, he slid his fingers along the blade. Taoist priest Wu Chen wanted to turn the blade and use the blade to cut off his fingers. However, Song Qinshu borrowed the force to bend the long sword. After a crisp sound, the long sword was broken into 2 pieces. Before Taoist priest Wu Chen could react, Song Qinshu raised his finger, and the broken sword in his hand slit his throat. Second leader, Taoist priest. Not only were the members of the Red Flower Society dumbfounded, even Zhu Manting and Xia Qingqing were dumbfounded. They were all guessing in their hearts, what kind of martial arts is this? After all, Tianhong and Tianjing's martial arts were 1 level higher. Yuanting was cautious by nature and never greedy for achievements. Therefore, the 3 of them were still able to withstand the pincer attack of Song Qinshu's fists and swords. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that the 3 of them had already been defeated. It was only a matter of time before the victor was decided. However, Song Qingshu frowned inwardly. These three peoples Wu Gongming obviously, they were all from famous and orthodox families with extremely solid foundations. Although the power of their moves was not great, they had very few flaws. It would not be so easy for him to defeat them. At this time, he was in deep danger. It was really unwise to waste too much energy on these people. Just as Song Qingshu was hesitating, a devil-masked man in black suddenly jumped out from the nearby bushes and attacked him from behind. His movement was extremely fast, and his palm was mixed with the sound of wind and thunder. At first glance, it was obvious that his martial arts were much higher than everyone else's. Xia Qingqing turned pale with fright. Unfortunately, she was too far away and could not rescue him in time. In a hurry, she could only slide out a golden snake all from her sleeve and shoot it at the black shadow. However, she also knew that it posed no threat at all. Unlike Xia Qingqing, Zhu Manting could more directly judge the demon-masked man's martial arts. She had seen Zhang Wuji fight, and in her opinion, the demon-masked man's martial arts were not inferior to Zhang Wuji's. Zhu Manting knew that although Song Qingshu's martial arts were miraculous, if she allowed such a super expert to launch a sneak attack, she was afraid that it would not bode well. Although she had so many thoughts in her mind, in the eyes of the crowd, it was only a matter of a moment. Zhu Manting did not even have time to pull out her sword. She braced herself and rushed forward, standing between the demon-masked man and Song Qingshu. Unfortunately, the demon-masked man's attack was so powerful that Zhu Manting only managed to parry it a little, and was hit in the chest by his palm. Like a kite with a broken string, she fell backward. With a gloomy face, Song Qingshu dodged the three people who surrounded him with a punch, a palm, and a kick. He leaped up and held the falling Zhu Manting in his arms, and with the other hand, he controlled the wooden sword and shot it at the demon-masked man. The demon-masked man's eyes narrowed, and he hurriedly retreated. A moment later, he appeared on the roof of the house. Looking at the wound on his shoulder, he said in a deep voice, "Good swordsmanship." Just as he was about to continue the fight, suddenly, a signal of fireworks came from the east side of the city. The demon-masked man was stunned. He had asked Yelu Qi and Yelu Nanxian to monitor the movements of the Divine Dragon cult. Could it be that something had happened to the Divine Dragon cult? It didn't matter if the entire Divine Dragon cult died, but there was one person who couldn't die. That person was the hope of his family. He looked back at Song Qingshu with reluctance and said, "Song Xiaoxia's swordsmanship is amazing. If there is a chance, I will come again." After that, he hurried to the place where the fireworks were coming from. Song Qingshu looked at the beautiful woman in his arms, who was barely breathing. His face was gloomy and uncertain. "Get ready to shoot." With the sound of orderly footsteps, a group of archers rushed in from the gate. They all drew their bows and aimed at Song Qingshu and Xia Qingqing. As soon as the Lord gave the order, they would immediately shoot them into a beehive. Xia Qingqing was shocked. She hurriedly raised the golden snake sword and attacked Song Qingshu. "Die, you scoundrel!" When she passed by Song Qingshu, she whispered to the man who was looking at her in surprise, "Take me as a hostage, and I will escort you out of the palace." Song Qingshu immediately understood. With Xia Qingqing's deliberate cooperation, he subdued her in one move. He put the golden snake sword on her neck and stood in front of the two people. He looked at Hongli and said, "If the Lord is willing to let your beloved concubine be shot into a beehive, you might as well give the order to shoot." Yu Wanting was startled and hurriedly said, "That's right, Luo Bing has always coveted sister-in-law, but I let him off on account of his young age." But this time, everyone agreed to send Luo Bing on this mission, but because of his own selfishness, he tried his best to obstruct it. He even privately threatened me that if I didn't stop Luo Bing's mission, he would inform Song Qingshu. Loyal but unjust people. Li Yuanji was so angry that her whole body trembled. What a righteous and awe-inspiring act! It's obviously you who… Luo Bing suddenly grabbed her hand. Seeing that she was looking at her in confusion, she firmly shook her head and said in a low voice, "Look at the current situation. If you reveal that big secret, Hongli will definitely kill you to silence you. Everyone here will die. Song Qingshu was dragged into this because of our request. Do you really have the heart to watch him die like this?" Li Yuanji's expression changed rapidly. Finally, she fiercely spat at Yu Wanting, shameless. Finished speaking, she turned around and remained silent. Luo Bing, I am also very sad about 14th brother's death. But just because of this, are you going to betray the Red Flower Society and help Song Qingshu? Wen Tailai asked with a pained heart. Fourth brother, Yu Wanting is a despicable and shameless villain. As for the reason, it's not convenient for me to say it at this time. If you believe me, then come with us. I will explain the truth to you afterwards. Luo Bing looked at her husband and said softly, "If you don't say anything, how can I believe you?" Wen Tailai said angrily. "Tailai, this woman is not worthy of your appreciation. As the eldest sister-in-law, she doesn't know how to set an example. Instead, she intentionally or unintentionally seduced Yu Tong and has an unclear relationship with him. Now, it seems that she is having an affair with Song Qingshu. Look at the strong desire of love between her brows. I'm afraid that she has already done something wrong to you. The age gap between the two of you is quite large. It seems that Luo Bing prefers young and handsome gigolos," Yu Wanting said with a cold smile. "Is that really the case?" Wen Tailai looked at Luo Bing in pain. Luo Bing opened her mouth several times to explain, but she didn't know where to start. Although Yu Wanting was deliberately slandering her, he had indeed guessed some things correctly. She faintly sighed, "Fourth brother, I am your wife. You don't believe me, but you believe the words of an outsider." The cracks caused by the incident in the Imperial Palace were getting bigger and bigger, and Luo Bing's heart was getting colder and colder. "Who said that you are his wife?" Song Qingshu's voice sounded. "Fourth brother one, if I remember correctly, you sold Luo Bing to me in the Imperial Palace last time, right?" Hearing him mention this, Luo Bing's face paled. When Tailai became even angrier, "You only used despicable methods last time. No matter what, it is a fact that you sold her to me, so strictly speaking, she is my woman. She has nothing to do with you anymore. Bing come over to my side." Luo Bing's heart was a mess at this moment, and her mind was blank. Feeling the unquestionable tone in Song Qingshu's words, she unconsciously walked over to him. Seeing this, Zhang Kongyan and the others also held Yong Yen hostage and moved over with her. "You're messing with someone else's wife again." Xia Qingqing's lips moved slightly, and there was no emotion in her voice. "You're still messing with other men." Song Qingshu always had a thorn in his heart about Xia Qingqing's choice and couldn't help but retort. Xia Qingqing wanted to say something but stopped. Her heart was filled with bitterness and bitterness. She couldn't tell him in front of so many people that she was only pretending to be a princess and was still keeping her chastity. "Can you guys be more specific when you're flirting? I'm about to die." Suddenly, an extremely weak voice came from Song Qingshu's arms. "Miss Jiu, don't worry. I'm using my true qi to protect your life. You're fine for now." Song Qingshu looked down at the beauty's pale face and said softly, "That's exactly why I'm worried." Being hugged by the other party and smelling his manly scent, Zhu Xiaoyan's pale face turned slightly red. "Now that we're facing a great enemy, it's really unwise for you to waste your Jinqi on me. It's nothing to waste a bit of true qi to save someone's life, let alone you," Song Qingshu said lightly. Hearing his words, Xia Qingqing's heart dimmed. She felt that Jiu seemed to be closer to Song Qingshu than she was. However, when she thought of her revenge plan, she quickly suppressed this trace of emotion. During this time, Li Yuanji, Luo Bing, and the others had arrived at Song Qingshu's side and were vigilantly confronting the people of the Wang family. Lord Song, what do you mean? After listening to their jealousy, Hong Li snorted coldly. Looking at his son who had fallen into the enemy's hands, he was extremely angry. If it was before, he wouldn't care too much about Yongyan's life because he had Fu Kangon. But now, the most capable Fu Kangon was dead. Among the remaining sons, only Yongyan could be considered a talent. The other sons were useless. Hong Li's ambition was to conquer the world. Naturally, he needed a capable son who could help him. Therefore, he had to be cautious. Your Highness, you've misunderstood me. I'm just following the Emperor's decree to bring the Crown Prince to participate in the Shixia's groom selection. Prince Bao, please accept the decree. Yongyan is specially appointed as the Commandery Prince of Jiaqing. He will represent the Qing dynasty in the Shixia's groom selection. I hope Yongyan will do his best and not let down the Qing dynasty's prestige. Song Qinshu rejoiced. Fortunately, he had always felt that this imperial edict was of great value. Therefore, he didn't announce it in advance and kept it until now. Lord Song, passing a fake imperial edict is a serious crime that will result in the extermination of one's family. Originally, Hong Li weighed the pros and cons considering the benefits that Xia Qingqing could bring. He had the intention to let Song Qinshu go. However, he had lost a lot of soldiers. It would be embarrassing for him to just let him go. With this imperial edict, Hong Li naturally didn't need to worry about Yongyan's safety. Moreover, he had a way out. However, he always felt that the appearance of this imperial edict was too much of a coincidence. It was hard for him to not be suspicious. Your Highness, you must be joking. I wouldn't dare to pass a fake imperial edict even if I had the guts. Your Highness, please send someone to the capital to inquire about it. You'll know about the groom selection. Song Qinshu answered. Did you know that I, Fu would die a long time ago? That's why you caught Yongyan so coincidentally? Hong Li was silent for a while before he suddenly asked. Song Qinshu was shocked. He quickly said, the matter regarding the Crown Prince has nothing to do with this lowly official. The reason why Song Qinshu caught Yongyan was because he had no other choice. Fu Kangon had many experts around him. Song Qinshu couldn't catch him even if he wanted to. He couldn't catch him. Yongyan was different. He didn't live in the manor, so it was much easier to catch him. Moreover, Hong Li was quite fond of him. In Song Qinshu's original plan, he and Jiu would save Xia Qingqing and leave the manor quietly. Using Yongyan as a hostage was just the last insurance for Song Qinshu to prevent this kind of situation from unraveling. You'd better not. Hong Li snorted. Otherwise, this prince will kill you even if I have to go to heaven or hell. With that said, he turned and waved his hand at his subordinate. Make a path and let them leave. Your Highness. When Tailai was shocked and angry. He was definitely one of the people present who didn't want to see Song Qinshu leave. Are you the prince or am I the prince? Hong Li glared at him. When Tailai subconsciously took half a step back. Tailai, there's still time. We'll take revenge in the future. Yu Wanting patted his shoulder and comforted him. There's also Taoist priest Wu Chen's revenge. Chen Jialua's eyes were full of anger. Song Qinshu actually felt a little sorry for killing Taoist priest Wu Chen just now. However, the other side had 7 experts pincer attack him. The situation was critical, so he could only strike heavily from the beginning and defeat them one by one. If he had been soft-hearted for a moment, he might have died on the spot. Therefore, although he felt sorry, he didn't regret it. If he had to do it again, he would still kill them. Chapter 237. Luo Bing stopped in her tracks and hesitated for a moment before following Song Qinshu. She kept telling herself in her heart that if she stayed by Wen Tailai's side, Yu Wanting would definitely find a chance to silence her and might even endanger her husband's safety. It was better to stay by Song Qinshu's side and think of a way to expose Yu Wanting's true identity. As for whether she subconsciously didn't know how to face her husband, that was unknown. Watching Song Qingshu and his entourage go out of Xingjing City, Hongli said in a low voice, "Should you release the princess now?" Song Qingshu was about to refuse, but Xia Qingqing whispered to him, "Let me go back, or I will hate you for the rest of my life." Her voice was full of determination. Song Qingshu furrowed his brows and was about to forcefully take her away when Xia Qingqing seemed to see through his thoughts. She quickly said, "He and I are just using each other. I won't let any other man get close to me." Song Qingshu was stunned, and then a burst of ecstasy rose in his heart. Xia Qingqing took the opportunity to break free from his hand and slowly walked to Hong Li's side. In the eyes of others, it seemed that Song Qingshu had agreed to Prince Bao's condition and kept his promise to release his concubine. Only Zhu Mang, who was in Song Qingshu's arms, heard everything clearly and was at a loss. "Qingqing, are you two so close?" Xia Qingqing returned to Hong Li's camp and lowered her head in silence. Yuanting snorted at her and hurriedly came to Hong Li's side. Looking at Song Qingshu and his entourage gradually disappearing, he said anxiously, "Hong, Your Highness, in this way, aren't we giving Yongyan to Kangxi as a hostage?" Hong Li shook his head and said, "It doesn't matter. As long as Kangxi doesn't want to fall out with me, I will naturally send him to Xixia to find a husband. If he really becomes the Emperor's son-in-law, we will have a strong ally, and Kangxi will not dare to touch him easily. Even if he can't become the Emperor's son-in-law, I can still send some masters to kidnap him on the way back." Hong Li's voice suddenly became low as he looked at the imperial decree in his hand and said hatefully, "This glory should have been obtained by Fu Heir. What a divine dragon sect! This king will definitely not leave a single blade of grass on your island." Yuanting's gaze fell onto the imperial edict. It was clearly written that Fu Kangon was conferred the title of Prince of Zhejiang and was sent to represent the Qing dynasty in the betrothal contest. In the suburbs 10 miles east of the city, Su Quan slapped away the devil-masked man's hand and said with hatred, "I don't need you to save me. You don't need my help?" The devil-masked man sneered, "If I hadn't appeared, you would have been taken back to Hong Li by the masters of the prince's mansion. Hong Li's most beloved son died in the hands of the divine dragon cult. You can imagine what kind of humiliation you will suffer." Seeing that Su Quan was silent, the devil-masked man sighed, "Do you still hate me so much?" If Yelu Nanxian and Yelu Qi were here, they would have cried out in shock. The head of Liao's most mysterious organization, the Secret Intelligence Bureau, was actually the divine dragon cult's cult leader's wife's father. "Back then, you cruelly abandoned my mother, causing her to die of depression. I swore that I would never forgive you." At this moment, Su Quan's image was no longer that cult leader's wife, but a pitiful lonely girl. "I have my own difficulties? My difficulties are that I am a Khitan, and your mother is a Han. For your mother's sake, I had already agreed to become a Han with her, and even changed my name to Han Suyin. I wanted to grow old with her. However, I didn't expect that the Song dynasty would betray me, disregarding the 100 years of brotherhood between the Song and Liao dynasties, and join forces with the Jin kingdom to attack my Liao dynasty, causing my Liao dynasty to almost be destroyed. Naturally, I couldn't ignore it, so I left you and your mother behind and returned to help the former emperor defend against the Jin kingdom's cavalry. It's quite funny now that I think about it. The Song dynasty, for a mere 16 prefectures of Yenyun, became greedy and betrayed us. In the end, not only did they not reap any benefits, they even caused their country to be destroyed. Not only did they lose more land in the Central Plains, even their 2 dog emperors were captured by the Jin kingdom. At the same time, countless imperial concubines and princesses were captured, and they were humiliated by the Jin kingdom. It was simply too satisfying. The devil-masked man became more and more excited as he spoke, and in the end, he burst into laughter. "I don't understand these national affairs that you're talking about. I only know that after you returned to Liao, you remarried a new wife. My mother originally had a glimmer of hope for you, but after hearing this news, she fell ill. As Su Quan spoke, the rims of her eyes reddened. At that time, Liao was at its most critical moment, but the nobles were still scheming against each other. I married that woman only for a political marriage, the devil-masked man explained. Seeing that Su Quan was still indifferent, he knew that he couldn't continue on this topic, so he quickly changed the topic. After the situation in Liao stabilized, I sent people everywhere to search for news of you and your mother. In the end, I found out that your mother had passed away for many years, and your whereabouts were unknown. Later, after many inquiries, I finally found out that you were snatched away by the divine dragon cult's Hong Antong to become the cult leader's wife. Humph, that rotten old man, how could he marry a beautiful daughter like me? Chapter 238. You have to take off all the clothes on the victim's body. Otherwise, the flow of true qi through the clothes will not be smooth. Song Qinshu had a strange expression on his face. Zhu Xiaoyi stared at him quietly, as if trying to read his mind. After a while, she sighed softly and said, "I'm starting to regret saving you." Song Qinshu gave her an apologetic look and waited for her to continue. Sure enough, after a while, Zhu Xiaoyi said shyly, "Then cover your eyes later." She still had too many things to do and too many unfulfilled wishes. Although she had the instinctive shyness of a young girl, the demeanor of a member of the royal family made her quickly adjust her mood and calmly accept this reality. "But covering my eyes won't help." Song Qinshu shook his head. "You don't want to cover your eyes?" Zhu Xiaoyi's expression changed. "No." Song Qinshu smiled bitterly. "I'm saying that I don't know the scripture of divine radiating art anymore. Last time when Zhang Wuji threw me off the cliff, it caused the yin and yang in my body to go haywire. I had no choice but to practice another type of inner qi, and it has already washed away the divine radiating qi in my body." Zhu Xiaoyi felt a suffocation in her chest, and blood trickled down the corner of her mouth. She glared at him and said, "Are you trying to make fun of me?" "Not really. I'm just giving you some time to get used to it. I don't want you to turn against me when I tell you the real way to save yourself." Song Qinshu answered. "What is the real way?" Zhu Xiaoyi looked at him curiously. "The inner qi that I'm practicing is called the delightful Zen. With your knowledge, I'm sure you know where it came from." Song Qinshu was a little embarrassed. After all, it was too embarrassing to say it out loud, especially in front of a woman. "Delightful Zen?" Yu Xiaoyi's expression changed. "You mean the dirty martial art of plucking qi?" "Let me correct you. The essence of the delightful Zen is a martial art of dual cultivation, not a martial art of plucking. As for whether it's obscene or not, it's up to you. Anyway, I think it's pretty good." As he spoke, Song Qinshu giggled. "Why are you telling me this?" Julia turned her head away, not wanting to hear him continue. "Though a delightful Zen art is very miraculous. After practicing this martial art, the newly born delightful Zen qi actually devoured the 9 yin qi and godly illumination qi in my body, giving it the characteristics of both martial arts. Naturally, it also has the effect of reviving the godly illumination scripture. But it can't be used to heal injuries like the godly illumination scripture." Song Qinshu answered. "Then how do we heal him?" Yu Xiaoyi had already guessed a few things, but she still asked. "Dual cultivation." Song Qinshu's expression was a little awkward. "Only through dual cultivation can I infuse the delightful Zen qi into your body and completely heal your internal injuries." Zhu Xiaoyi's expression didn't change as he expected. Instead, she looked at him indifferently and said, "Are you trying to take advantage of me?" Song Qinshu said seriously, "Young Lady Jiu, you are from the imperial family, so you must know that with my current status, I have no lack of women. If I was interested in you, I would naturally pursue you openly and not resort to such underhanded means. Not to mention, you are not only my friend, but also my savior. After listening to him, Zhu Xiaoyi sighed and said, Let me think about it. Young Lady Jiu, your injuries can't be delayed any longer. If we don't treat them in time, I'm afraid that even a Daluo Golden Immortal won't be able to save you. Song Qingshu didn't lie. He could sense that Zhu Xiaoyi's breathing was getting weaker and weaker. This is related to a girl's reputation. How can I get up so quickly? Zhu Yanqi angrily glared at him. Hearing this, Song Qingshu didn't rush her anymore. In order not to disturb her, he quietly sat on the ground and closed his eyes to meditate. After about half an hour, Zhu Xiaoyi's voice sounded, You save me. Song Qingshu opened his eyes. Zhu Xiaoyi's determined eyes began to dodge, and her fair skin was stained with a layer of bright red. Looking at the beauty lying quietly on the bed, Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. If he had a choice, he wouldn't want to push her down so quickly. The relationship between the two of them was still very thin. What he did today would inevitably be suspected of taking advantage of her. Young Lady Jiu, do you want to take off your clothes yourself, or do you need me to help you? When Zhu Xiaoyi heard Song Qingshu's question, she wanted to punch him in the face. She replied angrily, Up to you. Then I'll do it. Song Qingshu sat on the bed. He seemed to feel that his hand was slowly approaching the lapel of her neck. Zhu Xiaoyi closed her eyes tightly, and her long eyelashes couldn't help but tremble slightly. Wait. When Song Qingshu's fingers touched her collar, Zhu Xiaoyi suddenly opened her eyes. Song Qingshu thought that she regretted it at the last minute. He sighed inwardly. But if she didn't agree, he couldn't force her to do it. Cover my eyes. Song Qingshu was stupefied by Zhu Yu's words. Why? Song Qingshu asked subconsciously. You don't need to know. Zhu Xiaoyi turned her head away and didn't look at him anymore. Okay. Song Qingshu looked around, and finally his eyes fell on the ribbon around her waist. The texture was soft and the width was just right. He stretched out his hand to pull the string of the ribbon. His hand was subconsciously blocked by Zhu Xiaoyi. Song Qingshu knew that she was still struggling, so he had to help her make up her mind. He pushed her hand to the side, and Song Qingshu gently pulled and untied her belt. When the unforgettable tingling feeling came, Zhu Xiaoyi murmured, Brother Yuan. Zhu Xiaoyi asked Song Qingshu to cover her eyes, to a large extent because of shyness, but there was another reason that she could not say. She did not want to give her chastity to a relatively strange man, so she had to rely on covering her eyes and imagine that the man on top of her was her former lover. The fantasy in her mind was completely magnified by the strange fragrance at the tip of her nose, and in the end, Zhu Xiaoyi could not distinguish reality from illusion. Her hands that were holding the bed sheet tightly at first also relaxed. Unconsciously, she wrapped her body around the man's waist, and even intentionally or unintentionally twisted her body to cater to the man's movements, and her mouth also let out a sweet cry. When Zhu Xiaoyi woke up, she found that the ribbon that tied her eyes had been untied, and she was in Song Qingshu's arms in a shameful position. What was more embarrassing was that the two of them were even still together. With a slight twist, Zhu Xiaoyi could clearly feel the shape of the part of Song Qingshu that had entered her body. The shameful feeling made her subconsciously want to break free, but Song Qingshu's voice rang in her ears. Don't move. I'm now treating your internal injury in the posture of the bright king and bright concubine of the blissful sect. It's almost done. Don't fail at the last step. Looking at Song Qingshu, Zhu Xiaoyi suddenly blushed, and hurriedly pressed her head close to his chest, unwilling to look up again. After a long time, Zhu Xiaoyi suddenly felt that the surging true qi in her body was far more powerful than before, and she asked, Why my internal force? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.